start, Laura?
Yeah, when it will be live, you will see it in the screen. It will appear like a live um, banner.
Okay.
So it's redirecting to YouTube, 3, 2, 1, and we are live.
Oh, thanks so much. Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to the Complex Forming Seminar, Virtual Pinups. We're happy to host the final presentations today. And before I start, I would like to introduce our team first. So in 2024, 2023, I had the pleasure actually to teach this seminar with James. So shouts out to him because lots of the materials that we have developed and still teaching now are actually also done with his kind of input as well. So thanks so much. And then in 2025, my name is Hisham Shawqi. I'm a computational design specialist at Grimshaw Architects in London. And I'm also specialized in geometry, machine learning, and web development. And I also lead this course, which is the Complex Forming Seminar. And I had the pleasure to teach this year alongside with Angie Marakakis. She is also a computation designer and an architecture assistant, but she's also working now as a teaching assistant in MACAD. Thanks so much, Angie, for all your effort. It has been amazing having you along, and thanks for all your support. Do you want to say hi before we start the rolling?
No, it's been my pleasure. I've really enjoyed seeing all the projects come along, and I'm looking forward to seeing the final results.
Yeah, me too. And we also have an amazing board of jury members. We have Yomna Al-Ghazouli. She's an old friend of mine, and she has been a colleague, and we studied our bachelor degree together in Egypt. And we also had kind of some fun tackling many architectural competitions side by side. Uh, Catherine Chimney from Price and Myers are also joining us. I was lucky enough to catch one of her recent presentation at Shaped Fabrication in London regarding the padding square hanging structure, which offered like great insight in the concept of equilibrium and structural equilibrium. So that was a really good session as well. And I thought she will be like a great input today, kind of like criticizing or also giving feedback on the structure systems that we are handling. And we also have Ines Brottens. She is a senior computation designer at AQ22 in London. And she has been an active voice in the London Grasshopper community and Grasshopper user group. And she also had a presentation recently at the IASS conference. Anuj Messel is also joining us today. He's now one of the design technology leaders at Gensler Europe. He's based in London as well, and I had the pleasure to work together, to work with Anuj for some time at Grimshaw. So it's kind of a personal pleasure to have him today as well. Last but not least, we have Andre. He's an AMICAD alumni with an art background, and he runs now the Solarpunk studio, focusing on temporary structures, utilizing natural materials like bamboo. His work's so fun and interactive, so I would really recommend having a look as well at all this amazing stuff that they are doing. Um, uh, okay, about AMICAD itself. So our seminar, the Complex Forming Seminar, is part of the module 1 of AMICAD. And there are 3 modules. The first module is focusing on advanced computation for environmental and structure design. The second module is focusing on building information modeling, smart construction. And the third module is focusing more on artificial intelligence. So I'm explaining this to you so you can kind of understand where our course lies within the entire master's. So our seminar is not the main studio. There is a main design studio where the students spend way more time, like basically the full 8 weeks to design the projects. However, in our case, because it's a kind of a supporting seminar, we spend the first 6 weeks first with like normal like studies, taking assignments, but then the students spend the last 2 to 3 weeks developing these short projects. So there's something to keep in mind as well, like kind of giving feedback and looking at the projects because they are like very short term. So this is where our seminar lies, and the other seminars in this module are the environmental and structural design theory, the digital tools for environmental analysis for architectural design, and the digital tools for structure optimization strategies, and our seminar in addition to the studio, of course. MACAD has a very interesting kind of format. There is the synchronous format and there is the asynchronous format, which means some of the students can actually attend the lectures in an asynchronous format, which means they only watch the recordings and they have like kind of separate live mentoring sessions to follow up on their progress. So our seminar is focusing on Rhino, Grasshopper, and Python. So we try to introduce the students to computational design, the basics of computational design, focusing more on complex geometry, parametric design, and how they can actually document complex systems and computation design systems. Our sessions range from introduction to Python, mathematical services, to form finding, to voxelization, to recursive geometries, swarming and noise, and also tessellation and tiling. So we have 6 sessions in total, like 6 tutorials, and then the last 2 sessions are actually focusing on the project itself. And here's like a very like an overview of the timeline of our seminar, starting from the lectures and the weekly assignments and ending with the final project. It's always interesting to understand more about the students' backgrounds and how we can introduce them the best to computation design to keep the balance between, let's say, challenging systems and very basic systems for people who have no background of computational design. But here you can see like it's a simple chart that represents the different levels of the students' understanding of a tool like Grasshopper, for example, where we only have like 8% of advanced users, where the majority is basically beginners, like students maybe who have never really used a tool like Grasshopper, for example. And then we encourage like having this format of weekly assignments so the student can actually be challenged and tested in an individual format. So on weekly basis, there is the weekly assignments, and then we end up having this short project so they can actually test their knowledge and all the things that they have been learning in a more practical way. We had like many different formats before for the final project, but I will also show you now a little bit of a brief on the weekly assignments that the students have been doing in this module as well. So the first assignment is this one, which is the mathematical surface. So they actually study how they can build a mathematical surface using Python and Grasshopper, and how they can control the geometry in a way where they can actually use this as an envelope for a building typology like a house. And we work on a mirror board, so it's kind of like an open format, like everyone can see everybody else like work. So it's kind of very interactive. And I'm just pulling like a few examples. And I will also share like an MVP, like the best submission prize as well for each assignment. So for the first assignment, we had this kind of great contribution from Charles, where he showed like great control over the surface and also kind of a very convincing method of converting this into a low poly geometry that could be used as an actual structure. And moving to assignment number 2, focusing on playscapes and inspired by the playscape structure by Newhouse, and focusing more on form finding and tensile structures, where also the students responded with their own work. So we give them more like an open brief, so they can respond in a more creative way to all these different parameters using the tools that we are teaching them on weekly basis. And the MVP goes to Aditya for this assignment. Thanks for this as well. He also showed like how he could really control the attributes of these surfaces and the attributes of the mesh forces on many different levels as well, while also showing a great understanding of the documentation behind the process, which was really the main focus of the seminar, like how you can actually document your process in the best way, regardless the end product. And the third assignment and the last one is how you can actually use voxelization and the Martian cubes algorithm. So you can generate like a simple geometry as a chair. And we had like many different like exciting kind of submissions for that one. Some focusing on how they can actually use all the different learning layers, the mathematical services, the mineral services, and the different parametric systems, ending up with the voxelization systems and the Martian cubes algorithm. So they can achieve a shared design. Uh, and the MVP goes to Eleni actually in this one, even though it's just a cube, but the beauty behind the geometry and the beauty behind the different iterations was actually very good. And for the final project, we had like many different versions. We started with a wildlife museum, like more on animal species, and the second brief was on a virtual prison, like how they can actually use computational design to design a virtual experience per se. And this year we thought about having uh, a more focused brief that the starting point of the project could be an existing structure. So how the students can actually develop a computation design system that can respect an existing modulation and existing 3D elements, and how they can actually then integrate these elements within their design process. So it's called Light the Market. Yomna Razuli, one of the jury members here, and myself had the pleasure on doing like a research project on that market like 10 years ago, part of our graduation project. And I thought, yeah, why not? We can actually use the same model again to as a starting point for the project, as I mentioned. So this market is called Babalu. It's located in Cairo, Egypt. And the idea was how the students can introduce a new lighting element using the roof redesign, but also how they can introduce new circulation system. And due to the complexity of the existing market, one of the main limitations was that keeping the main gate and keeping the existing structure frames, which is actually considered as a historical building, and how they can keep these valuable structural elements of the market, but then take this as the starting point of all their different proposals. So how they can design a new parametric roof element, how they can generate an optimized multi-layered circulation paths, but also how they can respect the existing steel structure and the existing structure spans. As I mentioned, it's like a very short project, so it's more about gathering their like first impressions and their first responses as a computation design system to this existing building. So if I look at this, I would say the main focus will be on the design system, the computation design methodology, the form finding process, and the design optioneering, more more than, let's say, focusing on structure analysis, building materials, or optimization. So like the last three domains are a little bit out of the scope, and they focus on structure analysis, for example, like during other seminars within the masters. So this is just for also for our jury members to maybe set their expectations right when they look at all these different projects. We have 24 presentations, so I'll try to wrap up this introduction now. And every student, it's an individual project. So every student will present their projects for like 4 minutes, where they have around 9 to 12 slides. And we are going to have 6 clusters of 4 presentations. So we're going to run 4 presentations at a time, and then we're going to stop. And then we're going to open the window for the jury members to give their feedback for, let's say, 10 to 15 minutes. And then we're going to stop this group of presentations, and then we're going to move to another one. So 6 clusters, 6 groups of 4 presentations, followed by a 15-minute jury feedback. And we're going to share this mirror board with like everyone on the Zoom chat now, which it could be like a very easy way for you to look at the different projects per each group. so you can quickly kind of remember the different slides and give your feedback in a more targeted way. So I'll share that in a second. And as a presentation order, you'll also find it on the same Miro board. And yeah, presentations time. Any questions from anyone before we start? Also for the jury panel, sorry, I was meant to ask you to say hi or to correct me if I represented you in the wrong way or like missed something that you would like to add. Would you like to maybe unmute and like say anything before we start?
I might just say one quick thing, if that's okay. So I'm not only a structural engineer, we actually do computational design as well within Professor Myers, and I also lead a competition group. So I'll be here providing not only structural engineering insight, but also hopefully I'll use my expertise in computational design as well. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Catherine, for correcting that. I stand corrected. Okay, let's go then. We have a lot to cover. Angie now will share her screen, go through all the recordings, and I'm dropping the link just now for your reference. That for the mail board. So if you go to the meeting chat, you should find the link where you can just go. And actually, I haven't really made sure that everyone can access this, so I think now you can. If you try again, I think you should be able to. Yeah. Okay. Let me know if you have any issues.
Good to go.
Yeah, all yours, Angie.
Hello, I'm Sushmita. I'm presenting my complex farming project where I'm introducing a parametric roof design for Babaluke market. I begin with a background study and analyze that the market is situated in the hard downtown of Cairo with hot and dry climate, and the market benefits from multi-access point on all the side. Moving to concept development, I derived a design inspiration from market main arched entrance combining with the proposed circulation part to generate a parametric roof form. So I analyzed the circulation path in different layers and proposed a few blocks and developed a circulation for it. And I identified the space needing a pattern shadow and direct shadow. Considering a Cairo's extreme heat, I introduced the two layers of roofing system to better control a direct sunlight inside the market. Moving to form finding, I took an existing roof geometry and projected it to extract a corner control points and used NURBS curves to join them, and I used rule surface to derive the top surface form. For structural support, I took a derived surface form and extracted a vertices out of it and then projected them to an existing structural roof and joined them using a pipe mesh to get a structural support for my derived surface. So here is a top layer and the bottom layer pattern. So the top and bottom layer works together to filter a sunlight, allowing a soft natural light to enter while reducing the heat and creating a comfortable and dynamic shadow pattern inside the market. So for my base roof layer, I took the corner points from the existing surface and converted them into a surface using 4-point surface and then converted into mesh using mesh surface and to tri-mesh and deconstructed it to get a vertices for loading and then used pull points to get a support at the corners and then I used a bouncy solver to get the output mesh and then subdivided the mesh using a Weaverbird loop subdivision and then used a tangent circle to apply a pattern on it. Here is a base roof shading pattern layer in perspective and top view. Here are few iterations for top roof and the base roof with XYZ coordinates, scale factor, and load factor for iterations. So this is a proposed plan where I've introduced the landscape element along the aisle. Adding a green place help to create a cooling effect inside the market while enhancing the overall spatial experience. And these are few sections cutting across the entrance and staircase to show the connectivity inside the market and from the outside too. Here is the overall exploded view of the market starting from the existing building to top roof layer. view shows how the patterned roof created dynamic shadows while the central green enhances the cooling and bring the life to the market space. Here are few exterior views and night views. So this shows that the design blends with the historic facade with lightweight wing-like roof structure, creating a bright open public interior that transforms into an immersive illuminated courtyard at the night. Here are few AI-generated images that visualizes the design in its real context. Here is a small walkthrough of my project. Thanks for watching.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rania, and my final project is about revitalizing an existing market structure by integrating computational design and parametric elements. So the heart of this project lies in a very simple concept. So to open the market and maintain the store's philosophy. So the market is currently a vital hub for small businesses and bazaars. And the design strategy seeks to make this traditional space more porous and connected to the surrounding, exactly as it currently is. For the reference, my inspiration came from large-scale transparent structure like the St. Pancras Station and Hamad International Airport, and the core lessons learned was that the classic element can beautifully coexist with modern parametric elements while emphasizing transparency and welcoming light and view. For the intervention, it's a strategic layering of new elements into the original structure, and we are keeping this iconic entrance door and the essential framework while introducing new facade, a new supporting structure. As you can see, this striking turquoise frame, the color that is highly connected to Egyptian culture, a new roof and ceiling designed computationally to offer protection and light, and new store's layout optimized for flow and display. For the computational workflow, the process is summarized by defining the structural base using dynamic relaxation for the ceiling and the roof forms, and concluding with triangulation and tessellation to generate the final buildable surface geometry. More form finding. So to find those unique forms, we used mesh relaxation and tessellation. For the roof, starting from the support point and the basic structural shell, we used mesh relaxation to find a naturally optimized flowing from that response to structural needs, similar to hanging chain models. And for the ceiling, we applied also the same mesh relaxation, but in a different way, to a base plane to create an undulating pattern ceiling, which was then finished again with a tessellation. This is the aerial view, and looking to the exterior view, we see that it perfectly captures the contrast of the traditional base preserved, now sheltered by a modern light, filled and tesselled roof that define a new architectural language for the market. The plans show the organized distribution of the new stores and the center stall, and the side and front elevation further illustrates how the new large span roof gracefully shelters the traditional arcade structure. So looking inside, the result is a bright, airy, and contemporary shopping experience. The new roof allows diffused light to flood the space, transforming the atmosphere. So the project demonstrates us how computational design is not just about complex geometry, but also we can use it to find a structure that is both contemporary and sensitive to the existing classical architecture. We can protect the market's heritage while also securing its future as a vibrant, open, and inviting commercial heart for the community. Thank you, and I welcome any questions.
Hi everyone, this is Emily and my project is a ballooning market. We are reviving Bab al Lu, not with a heavy construction, but through inflatable growth. So how do we fill the void? We are transforming the spatial perception from a hollow shell into a dense, navigable, pneumatic landscape. We have the ground floor, which acts as a market, and the tunnel acts as a playscape. Now, in the spirit of transparency, here is what we actually hide, the epic phase. The collision was either too hard or too soft, meaning the balloons were ghosting through each other like they lacked physical awareness. Once that got slightly better, we still had the issue of the collision between the balloons and the initial structure. To fix that, we organized the script into 4 distinct phases. We start by simplifying the complex heritage geometry using dendrovoxelization to allow a better collision, and then use stochastic seeding to populate the points based on our entry vector. Instead of using pressure, we use volume goals for better control and multiple collision goals depending on the need of each geometry. This forces the balloons to hug the steel columns. We sort the balloon's centroids along the z-axis to find a logical vertical path, then use a Boolean difference to carve out that continuous spine tunnel, and then cull any damaged intersection. Finally, we clean up the mesh, we run a quad remesh, inflate the panels, and use Weaverbird to extract a clean frame, turning it into a buildable ETFE component. This is the form finding in action. At this point, we have control over the entry point, the density, the scale, the subdivision level of the meshes, and then let kangaroo physics take the wheel. Simultaneously, the spine tunnel is being generated. Now about the colors. Why RGB? 2 reasons. First, context. The pure digital spectrum acts as a deliberate glitch against the beige analog dust of historic Cairo. Second function, the overlapping balloons mix light, creating a sun clock behavior that maps the flow of the market. Now, the most fun part. We can dial up the density for a shaded intimate zoo or dial it down for an open airy plaza. We basically let the user pick their balloons. Here you can see the z-axis sorting. We connect the centroids of the balloons vertically to carve out that continuous spine tunnel linking the ground market to the sky playscape. The physics engine ensures the balloons never block the main flow. At the ground floor, we have the commerce, while the layer above is reserved for circulation and play. At the urban scale, what does the bird see? It's a signal that something new is inflating inside the old shell. On the ground, what does the grown-up see? They see an atmospheric marketplace. The glitch becomes a lighting strategy. As the sun moves, the floor is painted with colored shadows. The most important question, what does the kid see? They see a wormhole. This is the spine. While the adults are shopping below, the kids are navigating a completely different world above. It's a hidden layer of the city just for them, suspended in a balloon network. Finally, looking at the social logic, we didn't just place balloons randomly, we curated the flow. It organizes the chaos of the market into a functional ecosystem. So to wrap up, what do I want you to see? I want you to see a project that respects the void by filling it. It's balloons that hugs the past and the people around. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ramon Garcia, and today I am presenting my project for the complex forming seminar, the pneumatic caliper station. The core concept is driven by a fundamental contrast, the relationship between the solid and the soft. And I want to explore how an object that is low in inherent solidity can still be structurally present and define architectural space. And throughout the module, I conducted a series of explorations aiming to utilize tools like Kangaroo to generate complex free forms and geometries through physical forces and responses. However, I soon realized that the standardization of such complex geometry will be a significant challenge, particularly regarding its panelization. And driven by these insights, I created a pseudocode that generates geometry that is both complex and quantifiable. The script generates a membrane that hangs downward while inferring at the top. Subsequently, the surface is panelized into circular collisions, and then it is repanelized into inflatable-like elements. And here you can see that first an horizontal frame is created and subdivided along the structure frames, and subsequently an inverse structure is generated reaching down to the ground. Next, the mesh tours into smooth membranes that create a series of column-like structures, and a negative load is applied to the upper mesh to create an inflatable appearance. Then the mesh is trimmed to define the shop's openings, and after that, a kangaroo definition is created to create circular collisions that are joined to create hexagonal panels using dual bicycle logic. And for the detailing, each hexagon is processed by extruding the center point along its normal vector, and then the surface is smoothed. And finally, the system is duplicated across the original grid subdivision, and the geometry is baked. And a frame of borders are added via mesh packs to complete the final form. The forefining process was driven by a series of adjustable parameters, and each one controlling four main aspects of the geometry. Number one, the structural descent of the columns. 2, the inflation of the upper domes. 3, the surface panelization density. And 4, the inflation magnitude of the individual panels. Here you can see various iterations resulting from these parameters and taking into account key constraints and varying the final structural weights of the project. And in this way, the system revitalizes the decaying market. The intervention applies a new system directly into the pre-existing site, where the original structural grid serves as the foundation of the modern pneumatic transformation. From the exterior, the volumes appear as extrusions emerging from within, hinting of the commercial activities from below. And the sections, we can observe corridors and shops nested within these extrusions, a design that allows diffuse light to penetrate deep into the space. Here in the architectural plan, we can see that these volumes define internal organization, creating distinct commercial spaces and intuitive circulation paths. The upper faces inflate to provide shade and filter light, while the lower faces descend to sculpt intimate shops interiors. And ultimately, the pneumatical incrustations proves that we can revive neglected historical contexts not by replacing them, but by merging the rigid history with a new, soft, modular liveness. Thank you.
And that's the end of the first group. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Ramon, Emily, Rania, Sushmita as well. Great work. I would leave it now to the jury members to start commenting on these projects. So feel free to visit the mirror board that I shared earlier, so you can also get like a visual kind of representation of different projects. And maybe we can start with Yomni, actually.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for sharing your projects. These have been very interesting. Okay, so starting with the first project, I appreciate that you try to balance the idea of focusing on the environmental aspect and taking inspiration from the existing structure. That was pretty interesting. Actually, at first, when you were talking about having two structures that are overlapping, I had a huge question of would it be dark inside? Because like with the overlapping structures, you would have some interference with light. But I could see in your shots that it was actually very successful. I'm wondering if there was more experimentation with the type of points that you took. Like it seemed like you took all of the points, had equal forces applied to them. So I'm wondering if it could have been further development if we could apply different powers to different points so it would have some organic feel to it. Other than that, the project is very nice. Thank you for that. Should I go through all the projects or should we go one by one?
So we actually have limited time, so it's really up to you. So you don't really have to comment on every single project. That's for everyone.
I do have...
You can just basically say comments on whatever you're interested in.
Okay. For Rania, I like the huge cover. It's nice. The idea is nice. I appreciate the openness of it. However, I wonder if we could have made it more inspired by either the structure or the context, because I feel like there's a divide between the cover and those things. So I feel like the cover is a bit imposed to the form, but overall the form itself is very nice. Emily, thank you for the project as well. It was very fun to see the different approach, I would say, to that. And I like how you presented your process. It was very detailed. I wonder though if removing the whole building was the best approach. I would argue that maybe leaving specific elements in the building would have helped creating this fluidity and void. I understand that she wanted to create like an empty space, but maybe having these blobs intersect with the different elements would have been interesting, aside from the main structure, of course. As for Ramon, I wonder if having these elements made the space less usable, because I feel like it took so much of the space. So I feel like as a further development to your process, maybe you could play a bit with the sizes and heights of your elements. That would create a more dynamic look to your design as well, and create more spaces. You'd be surprised of the in-between spaces that were created. And thank you guys for sharing your projects. They've been amazing.
Thanks so much, Yomna. Thanks for the feedback. Again, I would leave the door now. I'm not sure who wants to go next, but yeah,
I don't mind going next.
please do.
That's
Yeah,
okay.
please
Yeah.
do.
So overall, thanks a lot for sharing your projects and proposals. I think overall, the majority of the people proposed ideas that were interesting, but in some scenarios, I find that the way they integrated it with the existing structure and the rhythm was a bit challenging. I think in Sushmita's proposal, you could see as well the fabric was actually visually clashing with existing trusses. So I think being able to mindfully design something that works and responds to the existing architecture is very important. Another thing as well is scale. So I think in Rania, for example, the tessellated shape, when you look at the renders, they look quite like a tightly packed tessellated mesh. I think it would be interesting to understand the choice of that scale, how that responds to the density of that geometry and the visualization. Is there a potential for something less compact on top of that as well? Very often, structurally, we think about the connections. Connections means lots more material. It's something that's worth visiting. Also, the fact that there are two roofs for that proposal, it's a bit redundant because you have three shapes. Also very often with the form found sort of dynamically relaxed surfaces. So Rania and Sushmita, one thing that's quite interesting structurally is that these shapes, so shell formed, dynamically relaxed form found shapes, can work very efficiently as shells independently. So they're inherently very good structurally. So it's nice to actually think about how to make use of that and remove actually any secondary support structure. That would be quite nice to explore. For Emily's one, I like the sort of like fun functionality of that proposal. I think it's very creative, the colors, the way the different methods of using a variety of design methods, computational design methods to actually create this structure. Actually, it reminds me of a Mona Hatoum sculpture type where she has like rebar cages with glass blobs, which is kind of nice. One comment structurally is that you have these quadrulated steel frames. So structurally, when you have these quadrulated shapes, they don't work as well because you often would require stiffer connections. That's very often why when you look at meshes in structure, you look at triangulated meshes. So that's just something in terms of the inherent stability of not having to deal with that issue with the connections, having to take moment forces. So it would be something that would help with your structure and potentially refine the size of the elements. It's also quite nice how you've responded to the existing market, the way it's structured. But I think just like what Yomna said, I think you're reusing the existing structure and then responding to that. Maybe you could have used the existing structure to form the blobs in or try and respond to what's already there. Ramon's one, I quite like how even though something newly proposed, you do see an echo of the grid and the repetition of the existing structure. In the render, however, it's a pity how those mushrooms are so tall and they are so compact that you actually they kind of take up so much space that the volume inside is so occupied by these funnels that could potentially be something quite light and translucent and make the space more breathable, makes it feel like it's sort of filled up with this material. But I quite like how I think this is kind of inspiration as to how you've seen some Gaudi's like columns and concrete, that kind of shape. And there's definitely some kind of benefit in trying to think about how to make that work structurally, and that's quite nice because that would be, as you've drawn them, they're inherent, so it is something quite nice to explore. And I quite like how you responded to the environment, but finding the right balance of volume, scale, and space would be quite nice to look at. But yes, so I think that's mostly it for me. Thanks.
Oh, thanks, Catherine. Yeah, I think you covered a lot, both you and Yomna, but I would also like to hear if Anuj, Ines, and Ray would like to add anything to the previous.
Yeah,
Maybe
if I may, I will quickly jump in.
Go for it,
And-
Andrew.
Thank you, Anush. Firstly, I want to comment quickly on the nature of the assignment, the brief. I think it's a very interesting one because it's one of the hardest things to design a harmonic dialogue between old and new. So repurposing and reconverting an old market like the
Babalu.
Babaluuk, thank you.
Yeah, or Babaluuk, yeah.
I think it's a great design challenge and objective, and it's very, very easy for any designer to try to steal the show and to erect this massive roof that doesn't respect the heritage and the history. So I'm in Barcelona right now, and every morning I pass by Mercado Santa Caterina, which is a beautiful example of something similar where you have a classical facade and a very similar actually structure of a market, but has this incredible roof structure that goes over the top. And it's these kind of examples of architecture that have this dialogue of old and new, I think is what I think it's just really interesting to look at. I'll quickly go over some points. The first presentation by Sushmita was very interesting. It made me think of another structure we have here in Barcelona by Frank Gehry, the page, the whale. This is the kind of thing I was imagining with this shadow game coming in from all the light bleeding through these little. I presume those would be metal, some aluminum layers. Quite interesting. The second project I liked quite a lot. I especially love the fact that the truss and the facade have been preserved to some extent. I agree with the comment that Catherine made that it does feel a bit bulky and seems almost unnecessary. However, I do like that it creates a ventilated tunnel. So the third project by Emily, I thought it was very interesting. I wish you preserved more of the original building. I see that you're trying to reconvert all of this. Something that I want every group and every student to think about. And I speak of this because recently I've been working on a project that's to do with food and to do with a food market. An important factor is the dust that happens. So if you have kids running around above food, there's dust falling on the food. And this is something that everybody has to keep in mind because sanitation and hygiene, especially in a dusty Cairo, is of paramount importance. And the less of complex elements that can gather dust and that are hard to access with a little cleaner that you have above you, the better off you are health-wise. Lastly, the fourth project that also very lovely. The comment I have for both the third and the fourth is the whole thing, at least the way I understand it with pneumatic architecture, is to keep things light. But the way it feels here is that you're taking pneumatic architecture and making it so bulky that it becomes such a, say, like it occupies so much of the floor space. And the floor space at a market is pivotal for any businessman for, from economics to like spatial syntax wise. I like actually the contrast that we've seen, because in the fourth one, Ramon shows a very sort of organized lanes of stalls, and that works in many ways for a market, and many markets historically are designed like this, where you firstly this allows for ventilation to come through, and then you don't get lost. With Emily, I feel, for example, with the the population of these bubbles, it's firstly the market becomes a bit of a maze, which is tricky in itself to navigate through. And then it doesn't a market, it is a space that is an internal shell, but the inside should be constantly changing or evolving over time. So this modularity to rearrange the stalls, to rearrange the businesses is important. And this is where the less you have the less you allocate of a space for structural support for a roof, for example, the better. So that's just something to consider. But all projects are very interesting, and the logic of arriving to the form finding is also quite fascinating.
I'm really enjoying your feedback. I'm learning myself. I'm thinking now that maybe we can move to the second group, and next time we start by Ines and Anuj. So we can at least take like almost like around 15 minutes every single kind of a batch. So yeah, sorry for that. I'm just aware of the time. So maybe Angie, would you like to take over again and share your screen? I'll stop sharing now.
Sure.
I will run the timer next time as well.
Hello everyone, I'm Daniel. Today I'm going to present my project, Complex Form Verden. It's a parametric roof redesign for the urban building. I'm walking through each slide. This title slide shows the aerial view with the final design integrated into cityscape. The roof is a vibrant wave structure with a structural louver evoking the verdant living canopy. It's called verdant because it brings the nature-inspired dynamic to the urban environment. Move to the whole image workflow. The outline 8-step process, pulling from all the complex formed class assignment to build a formed roof design. Step 1, the Python initial form. 2, congruent to the translate mesh. Step 3, form finding for the organic geometry. 4, bamboo inspired gold louver for the light play. Step 5, combine into the flight in a roof start. 6, involve the 3D wave form with structure. 7, integrated existing column. 8, integrate for the final version. This is the script workflow. It's a beginning of Python string attractor to create the chaotic pattern. It's general mass and set entry location next, congruent mass relaxation, making the flow, and then mass stripping to the simplified into the ribs. Then connecting column, apply pulling noise for the VV variation. After that, set up the material. Form finding, this show from the string attractor frame to frame lines and the ribs, and then integrate the surface, tessellation, pulling noise, the panel, variation, the surface, and the colorful final output. It's about experimenting to evolve from the rigid to the organic geometry. Section elevations, long section views reveal the waves like the profiles cutting through the building, showing the interior high variation. North elevation highlights the layers, leaving appearance against the facade with the column piping. Continuous section, the short section display cross section undulating the form, emphasize structural integration. From the elevation show the bow flowing roof that contrasts with the traditional building below. The bird eye view from the above, you can see how the building nesting into the urban block with the colorful waves creating focal point. It looks like nature grows with the degree of building. Those rendering capture street view, the one of the side with the people walking by, highlighted the inviting entry. Another overhead distant perspective to show integration of the surrounding architecture. It brings the design to life in context. Top view and circulation, the plan shows the roof outline from above and the dust green line mapping pedestrian paths around the site. It inserts smoothly connecting street to the building entries. Another high angle and rendering zoom into the roof texture and the color blending into the city vibrate with the car and the people for scale. It emphasizes how it's standing out, harmonized. Finally, interior soft wheel. The roof creates a luminous color canopy over the marketing space with the light filtered through the louver like sunlight into the forest. The small plan to point out the location to show the blotting, vibrant atmosphere. The summary, the project blending computation, nature, and the structure, the transformatic roof. Thank you for your guys' attention.
The project seeks to root itself in Egyptian and specifically Karen culture by bringing together two symbols of architectural and spiritual significance. On one hand, the Karen windcatcher, or malkaf, a traditional passive ventilation device that captures and directs breezes into interior spaces, becomes the main formal inspiration for the new roof of the market. On the other, the Egyptian lotus flower, an ancient emblem of rebirth, purity, and the daily cycle of the sun, informs the tone and pattern placed across that roof. Through this convergence, the intervention aims to evoke the symbolic rebirth of the Bab al-Luk market. From the computational perspective, the development follows three main steps. First, the simplified roof volume is modeled and used as the base for generating the lateral vaults. These vaults are then remeshed into a predominantly hexagonal mesh, onto which a triangulation logic is applied. In parallel, two variants of the lotus tile, one representing flowers and another representing leaves, are designed. These parallel processes meet in the placement stage, from which the logic for the interior pathways and layout is extracted. Although the malkaf served as a conceptual anchor from the beginning, the roof shape evolved through several iterations before arriving at its final form. It began as flat planes derived from a standard malkaf profile, then shifted to rectangular openings, and later to catenary vaults generated through kangaroo. Ultimately, the geometry was distilled into triangular vaults directly related to the structural modules of the existing market. In this final iteration, the vaults are aligned with the structural grid and controlled by a consistent height factor. Their variation across the roof is managed through a graph mapper, allowing differentiation along the longitudinal axis. Additional structure is introduced along the vault edges and linked back to the existing trusses, and the surfaces are meshed with a target edge length to produce an n-gon-based mesh. Once this base meshing is set, the lotus tiles are applied. A triangulation logic is used to determine where leaf tiles or flower tiles should be placed. Faces that are non-hexagonal, such as pentagons or heptagons, are triangulated, as are hexagons that exceed a user-defined tolerance for edge length irregularity. These triangular faces receive the leaf and stem tiles, while the remaining true hexagons host the flower tiles. Inside the market, the roof mesh is analyzed to identify the four largest clusters of hexagons, which become the organizing anchors for four plazas on the ground floor, each symbolizing a season of the year. The centroid of each cluster is projected downward along its mesh normal, and the plaza radius is defined according to cluster size and a scaling factor. These plazas are then connected to each other and to the entrances to generate the interior circulation paths. The remaining surface tiles are fragmented through their center and, depending on their relative size, assigned to one of 5 programmatic districts: fresh produce, crafts and textiles, retail, food and tea court, and cultural and services. Here we can see iterations driven by the vault and meshing parameters, the flower tiling rules, and the plaza generation logic. As shown in the final row, the panel configuration directly influences the interior layout by altering the resulting hexagonal clusters. And finally, here we have a series of twin motion generated and AI-enhanced images that showcase the exterior roof expression, the interior ambience, and the plan and section views of the proposal. Thank you.
Hello, so I'm gonna talk about my complex forming project at Bab el Market. Bab el is a historic market in central Cairo that feels visually uniform and monotone on the outside, even though Egyptian markets in general are full of colors inside. My inspiration came from the Santa Caterina market in Barcelona, where a colorful roof was added without changing the building's essence. I took the idea of preservation and adaptation to create a shading system that reflects the market's interior colors outwards. My concept is adaptive shading through structural memory, treating the roof as a living structure. Each panel is inspired by the market textiles and guides light and air. The panels descend in height, and lower they get, the more they guide movement of visitors through the market's natural path. In the beginning, I experimented with a tensile fabric that moved with the sun path, but I encountered two main issues. One, the fabric didn't guide the user's circulations well, and two, it felt a bit forced onto the existing structure rather than integrated. So I adjusted my approach, and here I'm going to talk about the computational design methodology. I started by extracting the structure's outline and creating meshes. I defined load points influenced by a curved path, so the closer the points are, the more the mesh pulls downwards to guide circulation. Using Kangaroo for mesh relaxation, I got the final form. Then I applied color variation based on the Z direction, making the panels darker as they dipped lower, and used Weaverbird to echo the color patterns of traditional markets. Finally, I arranged a series of shops and culled the ones touching the path using points and curve to open the circulation route. In this part, I'm showing how the shop and shading iterations adapt to any path I define. No matter how I adjust the path, the shops automatically rearrange themselves to create an open route, and the shading elements lower accordingly. Each iteration shows how the roof and shop layout respond dynamically to the chosen path, ensuring that both the circulation and shading system are always in sync. Here we can see the planner view of the project along with the aerial perspective and interior section views. These shows how the shading element interact with the light and how the system is implemented. Finally, we have some exterior and interior animation to bring the project to life. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Aditya and I'll be presenting interporous overgrowth. The conceptual idea was to envelop the historical steel structure in a contemporary installation made of inflated geometric forms, echoing the playful twists and colors of balloon art, a sort of bubble wrap which contrasts with the structure's rigid industrial lines, creating a dialogue between historical strength and modern lightness. The end goal was to create a temporary, visually striking intervention that reframes the historical truss as a living artifact. The initial designs were focused on temporary, lightweight, intertwined lattice enclosing the steel structure and exploring terminations, interfaces, and its reflections seen on the circulation within the hallway. There was also focus on reflecting the ancient design typology and introductions of colors inspired by ancient Egyptian reliefs. The form-finding process uses the roof paneling extracted from given geometry using the centroids of the panel to build a separate mesh, which is checkered to create a set of rhomboids on the upper and lower faces of the roof. An extra set of randomized anchors are created to create a termination point both as ground anchors for vendor stall generation and as separately as anchors for the roof membrane. This is followed by multi-piping and inflating the final grid, which is segmented, then developed as strips, then colored following the positive Z direction. The next step involves using base geometry of the upper nodes to develop a mesh membrane with multiple randomization options, which is similarly developed as strips, colored with gradient variations, and processed to develop required porosity. This slide shows an aerial view of the structure which is enhanced using AI. These are some of the interior views of the market as a temporary hypostyle space. The sections here show the interwoven nature of the inflated members which remain self-supported without requiring any external support, and the colonial era structure is engulfed in a soft lattice structure as seen in the elevations. The building layout here has an organic pattern which has evolved out of a metabol geometry and can be developed into multiple options as per the spatial needs. The soft lattice and the roof membrane have flexibility to morph into multiple scenarios with variations in member heights, orientation vectors, and opening scales. Thank you.
Amazing. Thanks so much, everyone. As a caveat, I'm sure you have noticed, but many students use the AI to enhance their images. So we have to survive seeing Cairo from many different lenses. Like sometimes you're going to see it like 200 years ago. Sometimes you're going to see also future Cairo where like everything's clean and organized. So it's going to be a little bit random in terms of the context. But anyway, thanks so much for the presentations. And Nuj, would you like to go first?
Yes, of course. Um, I think I'm gonna first start by appreciating the amount of work that's done in such a less in such less time that's given. I think Hisham, what you mentioned at the beginning, I'm going to take that into consideration before I go into any of the projects in detail. And the topic itself is quite complex because you are asking students to challenge themselves by sticking to the structure that's existing, right? We are still struggling to do that, to be honest, right? Um, what I really love is that each student has tried their skills in computation design quite uniquely, and it's all different. So I really appreciate all the things that are done by the students, including the previous group as well, right? So I haven't seen similar computational strategies being applied by all the students. So I'm really glad for that. If we go project by project, if we go for the first one, Daniel, I am a little bit confused how the how the roof structure or how the roof itself was like I probably did not understand it right, but how is it sitting on the project or how is it sitting on the structure, the existing structure itself? I'm slightly confused with what's happening with the new structure and the old structure and how you're connecting them. And the other bit which I have a slight confusion with is what you're doing in the inside space and the outside space. Are they acting as two separate projects, or is there a connection between the inside and outside somehow? Um, I love the colors, but I'm slightly skeptical of how they are connected to each other as well as the existing structure. Um, with the second project, I think that's Maria's project. Um, I think I love the concept of using the catenary walls, and then the second bit, which is the pattern generation for the flowers and the leaves. I also love how it's very well developed, and you can see a lot of iterations that are done. Um, and if I just talk about the computational strategies in place, I think it's a nicely developed project. I especially love how you're able to articulate your flowers and leaves separately from hexagons to the n-gon meshes, and you're able to um, play with different strategies of patterns and how it reflects in the interior view. I think I loved that about this project. Um, for the next project, again, the concept of tensile and fabrics, I think I love it. I like that you are paying respect to the culture and how you want to adapt the colors which were and the hanging cloths, which I can see in your press tense images as well. When you were explaining the project, I don't know, somehow it went it or it struck to me that you were trying something which probably I think it's done by Studio Fuxas, how you would have these vortex coming in. I thought that's where it's kind of going towards, but then it changed slightly into more about hanging the textiles. So I at least when you were trying to explain, my brain went in a different direction, and then the result was drastically different than what I was anticipating at the end of it. Um, I really appreciate that you were trying to do some shading analysis and then trying to figure out what's happening. My only question to you this would be that are you doing these kind of simulations or analysis for the whole year? And is it responding or is there anything happening to that? I mean, it's a complex topic, so and I appreciate that the time's less, but just a few questions. And then the last one, the balloons one. Um, Again, I think I like the storytelling of the project and what was tried, and I think computationally speaking, it looks quite developed as well. The storytelling could be slightly better in this project, but I think computational technique-wise, I think it's nicely developed. And I love the fact that everybody's using AI, right? Because even in the professional world, I mean, it's taken over the world, so um, it's nice.
We try to limit the use of AI in coding because we use Python as well as much as possible. So we try to at least make them use it as a tool that they can learn from, not as like to use it as a copy paste sometimes. But anyway, it is what it is. At least we don't have AI voiceovers yet in the presentations. So Ines, thanks so much, Anush, for the feedback.
Thank you. So thanks everyone for all the presentations, also the other fours. It's crazy to think that this has been developed in 3 weeks and some of you were new into computational design, so congratulations to everyone. It has been great to go into all of them. I'll give a few comments in the first two, and if anyone of the jury feels like joining my conversation or adding something, like please feel free to jump in. So about the Daniels project, I think I liked a lot the concept or the approach of working linearly in sections. I think it works very well with the existing structure and with the existing building. And when I was seeing also the 3Ds and the views that you were showing in the slides, a few opportunities came to my mind, and I think it could be yeah, if these projects, that some of them, I would love them that they would go farther. If that would be the case, I'll suggest it as, for example, taking into consideration ventilation or light with the different sections and considering openings in between. If we are having a section and the very next one that we are sort of lofting in a way, maybe in some of them could be treated differently, and could we consider some potential openings for the ventilation that in the market it gets a bit messy there sometimes and it's a bit of a crucial aspect. And also in terms of light, like it's quite transparent at the moment what you were showing, but also it could be some bits of the sections, or some transition, like the transition in between sections that are covered, could be also thought as purely more translucent. I think that would be a bit more of game or interaction with what's going on inside. But an overall, as a logic and application, I think it respects the existing a lot, and yeah, and I enjoyed it a lot. So congratulations. If we go to the second project of Maria. So first, congratulations for the neat and the clean explanation and workflow and articulation of the project. And again, crazy to think that this has been developed in 3 weeks. So that was yeah, very easy to follow, and and as said, very neat. Say again, if we could continue this this project, I'll be very curious on taking a step further once you have your tiles and your tessellation, which is a great job in the last iteration, where you see that the roof shape is almost some flat surfaces joined together. Then there an opportunity of trying to implement like a single standard sizing of tiles. That would be amazing to think about. Like, could we describe this roof, given that it's a sort of a set of surfaces flat that are joined? Could we describe it with, as we been doing like years and years ago, like having just 3 or 4 types and then creating amazing patterns and shapes? Could be that happening in terms of fabrication or simplification of the that's a question I'm throwing here, and it will be quite complex, but it could be very, very, very nice as a further exploration. As an overall, I think you're taking and bringing the tradition and the cultural aspect into architecture, which I think is beautiful. And when seeing the images of top view of the roof, it just looks amazing. So congratulations. And also you are considering in the computational methods we're creating the bolts and the form, you're considering aspects as ventilation and wind, which I think is also brilliant. So yeah, congrats again.
Thanks so much, Ines. And thanks for being brief as well. I think we need to work together so we can fit all our feedback within the 15 minutes. Okay, who wants to jump in now? Yeah, Yomne, you can go.
I have a couple of comments. I'm going to keep them short. So for the first project, thank you, Daniel. It was a very nice inspiration. However, I have 2 comments. So when you're looking at the project, like, you have these nice bird eye views, which is awesome. But again, I'm very interested in the experience when you go a bit down, because as you can see, the area around the market is very, very tight. So you cannot actually experience this fluidity of the project. So I feel like you meant to have a free roof, yet you ended up being confined by the edges, and you had to have like a specific viewpoint to experience the whole thing. I think if you want to expand it more, maybe you should just play around the structure, take things out of their confined space, just to make sure that, like, from different points, you can actually experience these angles. So that's nice. Maria, thank you for your nice and clean project. Like, my comment is nice, clean, need a bit more of aggression, I would say. So I feel like your project is a fairly bit on the conservative side. I feel like you could have experimented more with the project, especially that in your first iterations, there were like things intersecting with the main structure, and these masses could have been more aggressive and you could have played more with them. And I would say mind the resultant silhouette, because there's like an image where you could see the front, and then there's the silhouette, and the silhouette looks distorted. So it's more like distortion rather than masses playing together. For the third project, Henny, thank you for the lightness of the project. I really appreciate that. I think the patterns, when you walk through them, the patterns could have been more inspired by Egyptian patterns as well, because I feel like at some point I was looking, is this Aztec pattern? Is this? So I feel like maybe after looking at these things, you could have played with that, because I do feel like the resultant patterns wouldn't be like that specifically. And for the last project, I would have liked also, you wanted to express verticality. So I would suggest, how about you play with perspective as well? Maybe making things more slender as you go, so you would actually focus more on the verticality of the space. Because I feel like if we experienced it with the human eye, it wouldn't be as grandiose as you think. But overall, awesome projects, you guys. Thank you.
Amazing, Yomne. Andre, Catherine, would you like to add anything? We still have 2 minutes. It's
I'm
going red.
happy to go.
Yeah, go ahead.
So with Daniel's, I actually quite liked it from from the design control aspect, because I found it was the right balance between something following sort of the rhythm of the existing structure, but adding something a bit different. But also, what I liked about it is that it felt really for through your idea and your shape, that you had a vision that you tried to find the right tools to replicate. So sometimes, very often, I think in parametric design, the issue that I have very often is that you see the tool. You see the tool by looking at the product, whereas here it feels more like there was an idea that came first, like the draping and the shape came first, and then you try to use the tools to create that. So I quite like that aspect. And structurally, I liked, and it makes sense how you would attach it to the existing trusses with those arms. Sure, it needs some refinement structurally, but from like a rationale, the way you've also connected them to where you have the post from the trusses, that also makes a lot of sense. So I think it's actually quite a nice thing. There's of course some refinement to be done on the interfacing and how it interacts with at the edges of the buildings, but I think I quite like what you've produced there. Maria's one, I think it's also very beautiful, delicate aspect that has an interesting effect in terms of the pattern, in terms of the methods and the tiling and the scale of the tiling that you've looked at. I think it's all of these projects that we've seen the second round are a bit more light touch, but more conscious and aware and respond better to the market's structure. So this is quite nice. And I like that as well, that you've sort of come up with a frame that you think would work with the panelization that's very sensible, and it's something that needs refining and designing and collaboration with a structural engineer would take it to something that works, but that the logic is there, that reasoning is there, which is quite nice. Same for Hanis as well. I quite like as well the logic between the response to the existing grid.
Oh,
The
Catherine,
structure,
we're losing.
and
Okay,
I
you're
think it's all
back
very
now.
considerate, but also
No, you're back now.
yeah,
We're
time.
losing you for a
Okay,
second.
sorry.
Keep
Oh,
going. Yeah.
sorry. Okay, yeah. And Aditya, sadly, your inflatable columns will not be able to stand by themselves. You would need a second supporting structure. But I like the idea behind it. Probably some kind of lightweight armature within it, like a steel and aluminum frame would help it work. But sadly, it's not possible. You have to have that as a self-supporting structure. You have to think as well about air and how to keep it in. I'll leave Andre. Sorry. If
No,
you
but
have any
actually, it's
comments.
interesting in this project because you can think that the roof is actually the structure that's carrying the columns, right? Because the roof
So
is supported
yes,
on the existing structure, so maybe it's kind of the other
so
way
you
around
could
in this case. Yeah.
exactly. So ironically, you think that because it's the geometry and how you've created the shape of the roof, you might hang the
Yeah.
inflatables, and instead of having
Fake
them as
columns. Yeah.
instead of having them as inflatables, they would potentially just be fabric. Maybe how to tension them to create the shapes that you want, and as Hessian described, them will be fake columns, but that would work, and they're very lightweight, so that's something that's quite interesting to
Yeah,
explore.
it's the first time for us as well to see so many things today, so that's why I'm kind of jealous that I can't really participate as much. But Andre, final comments. 1 minute, sorry.
I mean, I were 2 minutes behind, so I think everything has been said. Great projects. I mean, I think strong computational development. Some of them are very wild, like Aditya. You slapped a kraken on top of a market. An important point that has been raised earlier is the ventilation, and this is something that's due to the material and the structural nature we are not focusing on, but it's just something to consider because in a hot place like Cairo, the heat is going to bring up all the smell upwards, and it needs some place to escape. And materiality is another factor that we're not focusing on, but it's also quite important to consider. Like, I love Honey's project, for example. I think it's beautiful. I use this existing structure, but just thinking about how those fabrics are going to smell after a few years of that market running. Yeah, but this is not the focus here. But great work, great work.
I think it's a very good timing for you, Andre, to join this conversation, like working on markets and coming here to see these projects. No, really, really refreshing to hear feedback as well. Thanks, everyone. We can now move to group 3. And then after group 3, if you like, we can also stop for like a coffee break or something and then come back. I'm sure it's exhausting for you as well to listen to all these new projects. I'll stop sharing my screen and Angie can take over.
Hello, I am Eleni, and this is the presentation of my final submission for the complex forming seminar. The objective is to transform the existing historic roof market of Bab el-Louk in Cairo through parametric roof design and optimized user circulation while maintaining the existing steel frames. At the beginning, my goal was to find the roof form by using the existing roof surfaces shown in pink. I started anchoring certain points on the surface and applying loading forces to others. This gave me an initial inflated shape, but I quickly noticed several issues. These are that my control points didn't behave consistently while using the triangulated mesh before inflating, that the mesh resolution changed the form more than I expected, that in my early tests I also made every panel as a window, which instead of improving the space, it created an interior that was too bright, and that there was no plan on how to integrate with the existing frames that had to be preserved. These observations made it clear that both the mesh control point strategy and the balance between solid and transparent panels needed to be adjusted to achieve better results. Using Grasshopper, I built a workflow where a flat mesh is inflated and anchored along specific bays. Then the mesh is triangulated in the post-processing. Then, finally, I created a system for open versus closed mesh panels to control the light inside the market. By manipulating anchor density and loading forces, I could control the curvature. This workflow allowed the form to evolve naturally based on both structural and daylight intentions, which became the main influence in the project. Through several iterations, I compared different meshes as well as void and solid panel configurations. Each option produced different patterns of light and shadow inside the market. Here we can see how the new roof system sits within the existing steel frames. The exploded view illustrates the relationship between old and new. The new pipe structure follows the curvature of the roof, and each pipe connects back to the existing steel frames through a secondary network of smaller connector pipes. To understand how the roof performs throughout the day, I studied the sunlight from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. The results show clear patterns. The east side is brightest in the morning, the center dominant at noon, and the west side lightens up in the afternoon. These changing conditions became the key generator for the internal zoning and circulation strategy. Based on the sunlight behavior, in the morning, the east side receives strong direct light, which is ideal for produce, flowers, and breakfast-related vendors. At noon, the central spine becomes the brightest area, so I placed more active, high-visibility programs there, such as prepared food and artisan stalls. In the afternoon, the west warms up with a slower, softer light, which suits textile, ceramics, and other things. Circulation naturally follows these lighting shifts. People tend to move towards the brightest zone at each moment of the day, creating a continuous loop through the market. These are the sections and the 3D views showing how the new roof is integrated with the existing frames. These views show the market interior, the right side with the help of Nano Banana, where daylight enters through patterned openings in the roof, creating a play of soft shadows and illuminated zones across the floor. Thank you for listening.
Hi guys, so today I'll talk about my final project, which is about light path and structure and reviving Bab al-Louk market. So First is design concept and early explorations, where I took inspiration from the Hazley 9 Bridge Gulf in Korea, and also the largest wooden structure in the world, which is the Metropole Parasol. My idea is to create a parametric canopy that will support a sine curve or a honeycomb waffle wooden panels to lure the light inside the structure. And for my first computational design system, as I did my sign roof, I created a boundary surface and then did surface frames, create a geometry line to define the movement, and then curve closest point, and then do the sign graph, and then extrude it, X, unit Z, and then for my column, I did surface, mesh, and then weld mesh, and then just weaverbird, a simple geometry. This is my first form finding iteration. I realized that the roof and the columns doesn't really connect, and I lose a lot of control over the sine wave logic. And then there is weird ending and weird opening that was created, and there is no connection between the integrated structure with the existing structure that I'm having now. So, and also this roof doesn't show how it connects and how it will work realistically. That's when I did another form finding process that leads to my final design of the canopy. So I found this because of the lecture that Hesham showed how we use our geometry and then project it into the the structure that we want. So I'm using here is using hexagon and then cool index, creating an opening and then project it onto my geometry. So this is the exploded diagram of how it will support the sine curved roof panels with slot and connections, and then structural waffle grid canopy, and then the parametric canopy that will support it. And then I placed the canopy together so it can support my sign roof structure, but then I haven't worked on that, so it still have no control over ending and connecting points. And the new structure, it's weirdly higher than the existing structure, and it's not considering the overall context. That's when I did another form finding process and finalized my sine curved roof panels. I found this idea through eating chips, and I was eating chips and I saw the wave in my potato chips, and I was like, oh, it would be cool if I have my roof formed like that. So I did that just by points and then sine and then negative sine and then connecting the endpoint of the lines together, and then created this roof panels where I baked it and then put it onto the existing structure to create this wavy geometry where I think it's pretty successful based on my section and based on my two sections. So this is the final form, and I did an exploded axonometry to show how it connects and how they support the sine roof panels. I put all the circulation arrangements in the middle where people moved within like the checkbox, so the circulation can be easy for people walking in the market, and it's easy to be integrated with all of these columns. And then this is my aerial overview render. And then this is the inside render where it depicts the lights coming in through the roof and also the waffle wood. And this is another interior view. Thank you for listening.
Hello, this is Lakshmi Zara presenting Faraj Budgeting Market. This project reimagines Cairo's Babaluk through computational design, transforming a historic market into a multi-level
Angie, could you please raise the volume a little bit?
and architectural experience. Researching Cairo's architecture, I was
Yeah, I
immediately
can only go up
enamored
to
by the idea of dark
125.
panels.
Is that okay?
I think it's still audible, yeah, to some extent.
Okay.
Leading into a courtyard full of light. The design evolved through three phases, exploring traditional alleyways and light patterns. I found this concept of light being diffused by a grid. And from there, I looked into introducing mesh relaxation to achieve more organic forms, which did not quite pan out, but it did give me the idea to start with roof panels derived from the original structure. And then in phase 3, I started developing a tessellated pattern system through loft workflow and Boolean operations. Thinking of it in parts, I found that one partition of the structure can be replicated to minimize calculation times. And from there are 3 main parts of the workflow: the tessellation, the loft, and adding the openings through isotrims and B-rep splits. For the tessellation, I tried repeating polygons, which looked a little too much, so I quickly decided to go with hexagons, and then scaling and duplicating to achieve those unique intersections. The loft process was also really fun. Mapping the tessellation onto the roof, then lofting gives interesting lofts when each part is scaled. And then, of course, I was able to subtract with another form for the main entrance. I decided to go with a shape derived from the original structure's arch. Here are some iterations where I looked for a shape that is balanced and allowed for workable spaces. And from there, we see how at the ground floor, the hexagons offer ample space for vendor stalls. Hexagonal grid organizes the vendor stalls and circulation, channeling visitors through compressed entrances before releasing them into the central gathering space. The section reveals the vertical journey with tessellated structures creating varying enclosure levels and central voids acting as light wells and ventilation chimneys. These views capture the experience of intimate shopping and filtered light, transitioning to dramatic vertical spaces that provide relief and orientation. And so the Faraj Bajida market transforms throughout the day with shifting light patterns, animating the courtyards and creating unique experiences from morning to evening with the promise of relief after hardship. Thank you.
This project aims to revive and celebrate the beauty of the historical Bab al-Luk market and to give it its former glory. As seen on the first picture here, the market used to be built around by only 2 stories of solid walls with shops, leaving the structure a chance to be noticed from the outside, especially from a human eye perspective. Nowadays, there are around 4 stories of a build-up that seems to close off the original market structure, hence the main part of the building is hidden behind the rising towers of shops. At first, my thinking process was to keep all the surrounding buildings as they seemed to have historical value. However, upon a closer look at existing photos, it seemed logical to only keep the main gates as the historical part and to try and give the main structure some breadth and space, also for it to be noticed by passing by pedestrians. Even though the market's architecture was heavily inspired by the French Les Halles market, I wanted to link it more to its surroundings and local culture. Because the original gates are constructed with the traditional arches seen on the second picture, I thought of reusing the same pattern throughout the whole design, incorporating it on the roof too. I also thought of making the arches intertwine and found the following inspirations. Due to the idea of opening up a historical steel structure, I thought to suggest demolition of the surrounding walls and replacing them with a new rhythm of double-story arched shops along the border of the market. Then the intertwining curves naturally went up, catching the top vertex of each arch and going up along the existing structure. The new facade arches gave the roof new typology naturally. In terms of the computational logic, I looked into masks in Grasshopper as the fastest way of managing multiple complicated curves connections. Here is a step-by-step form finding on one of the modular bays. Using the guiding horizontal lines along the existing structure, they were divided into the number of points which matches with the structure itself. By using split tree with masks to choose which point to connect to which, then offsetting point connections vertically with relative item, the lines are formed between the chosen vertices and are then turned into NURBS curves for greater control. The lines are then lofted horizontally and loft surfaces divided and joined vertically instead. Then on the vertical surfaces mesh relaxation was applied. The strength of how much the mesh is relaxed depends on its proximity to the pathways on the ground floor. Lastly, the roof is added on top to cover the space from above. The relaxed meshes are hung to the bottom of existing structure, while the lofted surfaces are sitting on top of it to protect it from elements. This way, a series of interchanging checkerboard-like meshes is produced, which creates an interesting effect, impacting the light and shadows in a unique way, but still keeping the existing structure visible. Here on the following slides, we'll see the floor plans of the ground floor, first floor, and the roof. The main takeaways of this project are the importance of proper mesh optimization and how strongly it influences the final geometry, the need to resolve internal spatial logic more, including levels, stairs, and circulation, and strategies for making non-typical geometries more parametrically manageable and adaptable. And on the last slide, you see some twin motion light studies together with Nana Banana Leonardo AI image showing the whole market and its surroundings.
Amazing. The end of the third group. Speaking about design using chips, we had this kind of part of our lectures focusing on getting inspired by pasta geometries. When we were focusing on mathematical surfaces and how you can build surfaces using a fundamental geometry like a point, we got inspired by the design Pasta by Design book by George Legendre, and it's interesting to see how other food can be also used as the same kind of line of process. But anyway, it was really good to hear that. I will share my screen now, and I'll set a timer so we can go through the feedback. So we can start with Catherine this time.
Sure. Actually, I was just going to talk about the quickly crest inspired roof because I quite like that as well because ironically, structurally also makes a lot of sense. It provides a flat surface when it's crinkled, it has much more stiffness, so that's quite nice. I liked as well how you can see the inspiration for geometry and how it was used to drive the way the parametric script was used to create the shape. So I'm talking about I can't find, I forgot her name. Chloe's work. And what's interesting as well about her roof is the different interfaces and how you are looking when you're using the script to look at different separate components and how to integrate them. And very often it's one of the most challenging things of finding seamless connection between the different parts of columns and roof and different geometry. And I think those details can also be looked at parametrically at a more localized level with set defined boundary constraints. So if you have interesting constraints that you want to inform differently, you can also come up with quite interesting different connection details for connections, or alternatively find a way to come up with a way to tackle both structures jointly. So having that holistic approach of trying to solve geometry is also important in the sense. If we go back to the other projects, I think Eleni's one was quite nice with the shape. It's like a tensile membrane, which is very lightweight and usually quite interesting structurally. So you have a very coherent structural approach here, and that would work quite nicely and respond as well to the grid of the trusses.
We then have Chloe and then Lakshmi and then Marina at the end.
Great, thanks.
I'm sharing my screen, by the way, if you didn't notice. Yeah.
Yes. So for Marina's one, I think it's also very nicely done. The surface is porous and like a mesh. It would be interesting to think about how to have something more solid to make use of that curvature, because once again, curves are really good as inherent structural shells. So by doing that, you can think about how that could integrate, but at the same time, because you have a different purpose here in terms of what you're trying to create with the shading and the fabric. I quite like how your frame responds to it. So it's a matter of wondering if you want to have the inherent shading structure and the structure that holds itself up, or you want to separate out into components. But I think I'll let other people comment on the other works.
Thanks, Catherine. Andre, you can go next now.
Yeah, so I'll start with Eleni. Very nice. I was gonna say the same thing that Catherine said, that geometrically this works very well, both for structure wise and also for the sort of function that it offers, because it still feels light. It feels very airy. It seems I also like that the actual logic of the truss of the roof has been maintained, where there are three layers, because the reason why there are gaps in between those three layers of roof is pivotal for ventilation and I guess for light also to pour through, and I think this has been preserved here very nicely. And it's also an interesting play of, say, straight lines with curves. Moving on to Chloe's project. I like it quite a lot. I presume this would have been done with some timber material of some sort, which is lovely and looks very nice. I also really appreciate that you showed the evolution of your thought. I admire your courage to show us your early explorations that are, say, faulty. I am a bit confused as to the geometry of the pillar. It seems like asymmetrical, and I feel like this is where symmetry would work very nicely, because you were following this sort of Calatrava superpositioning of elements, which I love. So I would have loved to see that. I love also your decision to to get inspired by the Raffles chips. Anytime you have corrugated roofing, it just works well for rain or for any other runoff to go off. And I also like that I like this projects and the first one, because they are exploration of roofs essentially. The first one, actually, I really want to come back and just clarify something. I really enjoyed the circulation of light explanation. However, I'm a bit confused by the types of shops and the hours of the day or times of the day. Like, did you have in mind that the shops change throughout the day? I wasn't really clear on that. Say the fruits in the morning and the clothing in the afternoon.
Can I
But moving
respond?
on.
Sorry. Or
Sorry?
can I
Yeah,
respond?
yeah, of course you can.
Yeah, the idea is to kind of have morning related, as I said, like vegetables and fruits in the morning, and kind of like more like when the light gets warmer, the ceramics and textiles like throughout the afternoon to kind of have warmer light on it.
Okay, but would the vendors be rotating?
No. There would always
Okay.
be
I think the purpose
location.
of this study is to have a clusters of different zones where you then can be informed by to relocate or like kind of create the positions for the different types of vendors or like kind of
Okay.
shops basically under the roof.
Understood. Thank you for clearing that up. Moving on to Lakshmi. I think it's a very interesting exploration of geometry and its manipulation, and also I appreciate the not going crazy with geometry, but also just sticking to the regular patterns of polygons. It does feel like you're slapping on a massive massing though on this structure, completely wiping out what's been there previously. And this is a point that it's like it's a large point in architecture. Do we need to build something massive entirely and replace something that already exists and serves? But that's not our question to computational design generation. The last project of Marina, I really like, firstly, that you showed us the history of the building, like the way it looked in 1912, 1950, 1994. That gave me a lot more understanding of the history of the building. And then it's an important thing to consider when you're taking into consideration what you're taking out and what you're keeping. I also like your meshing system. I'm just gonna say that those nets are a double-edged sword because they look lovely, but it's the perfect thing to trap a dead bird, and that's just something that we we must be considering because birds and pigeons are the #1 terrorists at any market of that size in the city. So this is just something to keep in mind how um, how how the roof is gonna take life over time. Very interesting projects. Congratulations, Tiger.
Thanks, Andre. Thanks so much. Ness, would you like to go next?
Thank you. So thank you for all the presentations. I'd like to highlight from Eleni's project. I enjoyed the fact that the computational design of the roof was led by the functionality and like matching the light or the sense of how light interacts with the functionality of the market within the design. That is very nice, and also the graphics and explanation was very clear. I would wonder if because the same computational design method that you're applying or the bulbs that are generated, we are having different density in terms of we're having different patterns in terms of transparency on opacity, so that it gives this different outputs in the interior. It may be also interesting to explore this in terms of shape, so that we can achieve a bit more, take it a bit one step farther in terms of geometry, because the geometry may also give interesting lighting results in that aspect. So that doesn't seem that let's say repetition. As an overall, I enjoyed very much, and also I like to spot that it's as some of the other judges were mentioning, that it's thought in a way that was very well with the structure, and that will be very neat and interestingly nice to make it work nicely. And then from the next project, from the Chloe one, yeah, thank you also for sharing all your thoughts in the process, as Andre was mentioning. It reminds me a bit to the project of the Las Escolas de Gaudí, which is this small building that is next to the Sagrada Familia, which is actually working with the sinus and cosinus. And actually what they was using this strategy so that the drainage was completely solved in all the sites in a way. And also, as we've been mentioning as well, it works very well in terms of stiffness and as a shot in a way. So this is a very interesting geometry, and in general, working with pure mathematics is always a win, especially if this mathematics is preserved, is also a win for fabrication. So that's something that is beautiful to keep it like in the full process of the geometry generation that you've been doing. And yeah, then for the third one, I think it's very interesting, the idea of having different extrusions in a way that at the end, if light is entering through extrusion, in the extrusions are different in terms of depth, it can give a very interesting result of light in the interior, as you're showing in some of your renders. I think that's a very powerful idea of different models that are touching each other but have different depth. Is to that, yeah, it will be there's an opportunity of working a bit more the base, as some of the jury was mentioning as well, so that it that is not that invasive with whatever program that could be in the market, as an idea of roof and generation and following a rigid pattern that also somehow adjusts to the existing grid. It's very yeah, it's a very good approach, and I enjoyed very much the overall project. And lastly, the last one, I think it was very interesting to see for the first time that of the projects that we are zooming in a model, given that the existing is a very a market that is repetitive and that has a very strong logic structurally wise. I think it's very interesting to focus on a model, understand it purely, and then extrapolate that same concept to the rest. Potentially, this computational method, adding some additional constraints, may lead to even different geometrical results that may respond to other necessities of the market, as again, ventilation, light, but as an overall approach and understanding and being very clear with how this model is resolved, although it may have iterations according to different constraints. That could be a next step. It's very clean and nice as a logic, as well as being able to then, if that would be taken to further steps, that will help a lot, yeah, to keep this modularity.
Thanks, Ines. Anyone else?
I'll go next if it's okay, and I'm gonna take less than 2 minutes, I hope. I first want to congratulate all the students. Like it's amazing work. And Marina and Eleni, like the first and the last one, I feel you guys have done brilliant justice to the existing structure and how you're respecting the structure. With Eleni's one, I think if you just look at the roof, I think it's been all the other jury members, they have said enough about it, that it looks amazing. The way it's respecting the structure, it's following the base, etc. It's gonna work beautifully. I think loved it, loved all of it. Chloe's one, I think what Catherine said, I am gonna second that. I think the localized parameterization of the connection between the column and the angled shingled surfaces, or the raffle kind of roof. I think that is something that you could have explored slightly more as just a pure computational exercise. I think that would have been amazing. But the third one, I find it interesting that that you stuck to the concept from beginning to the end and explored all the possibilities computationally that were available to you in this, and you didn't give up on it. I liked the fact as well that that you tried few different geometry infill pattern kind of things, and the only comment I had for this was like the culling or the splitting bit that you were doing, the B-rip split at the end. Maybe that could have more articulation, and that could potentially take a little bit more. Um, it could have been more informed better by what was happening inside. And then the last one, I think the time's up, but I'm just gonna take half a minute more. And the last one, Marina, I really love the fact that you opened up the edge walls and what you tried to kind of connect the existing structure with your um, like especially if you go to the fourth slide and if you zoom in, like how you connect the edges, the portals that you're creating with the existing structure. I think that's amazing. Um, just a quick common kind of comment for every student who's trying the textiles and the hanging and the fabric is I don't know, maybe Catherine would be right person to talk about this, but wind loads, I don't know how that's going to happen. What's going to happen with that? Think about wind in the future. But as a computational exercise, I think it's amazing. Loved it. Thank you.
Just maybe a small note on this project by Lakshmi for the third one. I think there's a missing layer here, which is the materiality of all the surfaces. Because I agree it's bulk, but I think of course like if there was more time, I think she would definitely jump into like how she can represent all these surfaces with like a light material that can also respect the original structure in a way. But I think there's like a major missing layer in that exercise. Yumna, would you like to add anything here?
I have a very short comment. So I think the main comment is iterative processes. So Eleni, I like how she played with the light after she created the form, but I feel like she could have capitalized more on the iterative process. Like, okay, checking the light, then playing with the form, checking the light, making it more iterative. I feel like the most successful iterative process in this cluster was Chloe, because she went back and forth to experiment with the structure. For the last two projects, I feel like more experimentation would have been interesting to play on the final silhouette of the building, because something I've learned about retrofitting is that the silhouette when you're walking past by it in a street is very important for the collective memory. So I feel like if they played more experimenting with the final silhouette would be interesting. But overall, awesome projects. Thank you.
Can't agree more. Thanks, Yona. Would you like to have a coffee break now? Like, should we stop for like 5 minutes? That's a question for the jury members. Okay, I think you agree. Yeah, I think you need it. Well deserved. So let's take a 5 minutes break and then we come back to continue with the other three groups. Thanks so much for having you around so far. Thanks so much. See ya.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for the feedbacks.
Well, welcome back, everyone. Hope you managed to have a coffee. And now we're back to group 4. 5 seconds left. We can wait a little bit longer so everyone is back.
Is this sound of like an entrance of
We're
Star
trying
Wars
we're
in the
trying to ease
timer?
it, but yeah, it's kind of Hunger Games. It's yeah, it's the default sound of the timer when it ends. And sadly, that's the only app on Zoom that we can find. So yeah. If you have any better ideas, Andre, please share them.
And do some bossa nova.
All right. Okay, Angie, would you like to take over again?
Yep, sure. I'll share my screen.
Hi everyone, this is my project for complex forming in Bacalacu market. When I analyzed this place, I realized the main issue wasn't just design a roof. The problem is the experience. It's incredibly hot, the sun is hard, and the noise is constant. So for my project, Diffuse Skin Market, I asked myself, how can I cool this down space without closing it off? My goal was to create a diffuse filter, a skin drops that temperature but gets that vibrant naturally that vendors need to sell their products. So I want to be honest about the process. It was a straight line. As you can see in this early exploration, my first instinct was to create a continued mesh, but looking at the session, I realized I was making a mistake. The connection with the ground was clumsy, it was too thick. Basically, I was blocking the people I was trying to protect. The circulation didn't work, so I had to scrap that approach and find a way to make the structure listen to the existing flows of the market. So I went back to the grasshopper to build a smart logic. I start with the basics, the inputs. I took the system roof geometry and paths where people actually walk. Instead of forcing a shape, I generate a grid on the XY plane and project specific anchor points. The idea was to ensure that whatever I designed would sit perfectly on the old iron structure, respecting to the heritage of the building rather than competing with it. This is where the fun part begins. I use Kangaroo to simulate gravity. Think of like a fabric. I let mesh relax and fall laterally, but I didn't want random columns. I used a weight points strategy to pull the mesh down only where there is empty space for a walking. The results in the organic arcs are regarding to the construction. Because we have to build this, I propose using lightweight laser cut panels or even flexi molds. Since the script already includes the panelization, we can flatten these shapes for easy fabrications. Here is how the system comes together. It's like a sandwich. At the bottom we have the system iron structure acting as our base. In the middle, hanging from it is parametric mesh, the diffuse skin. On the top, we keep translucent tiles to protect against rain. This separation allows airflow between the layers, creating a chimney effect that naturally ventilates the market. Getting shape right to the some tuning. I test different parameters, and 10% opening the mesh was too heavy and touched the floor too much. It felt oppressive. I found the sweet spot at 50% opening, used parabola graph mapper. This gave me the successful shape you see in the diagram, with welcome arcs that look structurally sound and feel open enough for a public plaza. This brings us to the final results. Looking at this aerial view, you can see how the skin sits inside in the market, but the pedestrian view is what at the matter most. It's not just a roof anymore, it's a ceiling that shapes the lights. We have achieved that golden hour atmosphere where the harsh sun is broken down into the soft, warm light. Is as a space where the family and tourists can finally feel comfortable.
Hi everyone, I'm Giovanni, and today I'm gonna show you my proposal for reviving Baba Look Market. The title of my project is Earthen Curtains. My two main inspiration come from the Safadi architectures and the Nubian vault technique, and also the 3D printing with earthen materials. My design concept was to keep the existing truss structure. In fact, after evaluating that and the sunlight direction, I decided to set rectangular surfaces on the roof parts to be shaded. Then I deformed those surfaces with a mathematical formula. And after that, I split the surface into 4 different functions. The blue one is a mini vault made of 3D printed earthen bricks. Instead, the red part is a curtain made of fabric. Here we can see the result of the process of mesh relaxation for the curtains. Here we can see the steel structure for the vaults, which is composed by 2 high-shaped cross-section beams plus 2 hollow rectangle cross-section beams, which follows the curvature of the surfaces. And here we can appreciate the wall roof module with the mini vault composed by 3D printed brick elements. In order to find the distances between the interlocking bricks, I decided to evaluate the average incident radiation on each of the mini vault. The day chosen for the analysis is the 21st of June, because it's one of the hottest days in the summer. And I choose also to evaluate only from 9 a.m. in the morning to 4 p.m. in the evening, because the other sun vectors cast shade on the market from the other buildings. Here we can see how the form finding works. So when the average incident radiation of the mini vault is lower, the distances between the interlocking bricks is higher. I also shaped the internal path according to the roof structure. I decided to project the lowest point of the curtains on the ground, and then build around those points circles and metables. The circles represent the spaces for the informal gathering or for the market and the shops. And here is the first floor of the market with the metable surface which allow you to interact with the curtains. Here we can appreciate the structure of the market roof, and also here in the longitudinal section. And that's all from my side. Thanks for watching.
Hello everyone, my name is Nihan. For reviving Baba Look, my main intention was to create a strong architectural contrast between the historical street character and a contemporary special intervention inside. After stepping in from the street with its historic character, my goal was that people would immediately feel a special transition. For this reason, I placed the shops along the two long edges, and by doing this, I was able to define a large multifunctional open space in the center. Later can be used for daily life and the culture of Cairo. When we look at the process, uh, I decided to preserve the existing structural system as it's given in the assignment, but I also added a new architectural access to introduce a layer. On the base of the surface I created, I introduced hexagonal cells to reinforce the idea of contrast. These hexagonal units were scaled using an attractor curve, which allowed the pattern to respond dynamically to the geometry. And by using mapped surface, I applied this logic across the structure and the roof surface. From the very beginning, as I mentioned, my goal was to create a continuous circulation path that starts from the street building and rises all the way to the roof. To make the circulation fluid and uninterrupted, I defined specific vertical connection points, and at these points, I designed the observatory towers that expanded through this panel. So to do that, some of the surface panels were selected and transformed into isohedron-based volumes, which then evolved into these vertical elements. To generate these forms, I used Weaverbird mesh isohedron, and I split the mesh and select upper parts. I performed the form finding process using Kangaroo. My main goals were pressure, edge lengths, and anchor points. The naked points were defined as anchors, and hexagonal cell points were used as target points. After that, I refined the geometry by applying scaling and movement along the specific axis based on visual directions I wanted to emphasize. So here we can see how the new structures establish a dialogue with the existing one. The observatory towers penetrate the roof surface and visually extend the circulation upward while maintaining the rhythm of this historical sense. In this section, we can clearly see the relationship between the multifunctional space and the extended circulation system. The observatory towers work as both vertical connectors and special landmarks guided people through the interior volume. So I also taught that them, and I added diagonal bracing between the existing structure and the new panelization. The panels are designed as recycled fiberglass, while the transparent ones are glass panels. The main structural system is steel structure, which allows both structural stability and visual lightness. So the light that enters through these openings creates a dynamic lighting effect inside the space. This allows the project to change its atmosphere throughout the day, and strengthens the relationship between structure, light, and movement. And finally, in this aerial view, we can clearly see the contrast between the historical fabric and the new lattice structure. So thank you. That's all for me.
Hello, I'm Shahla Abishaheen, and I'm presenting my final assignment for the complex forming seminar, The Luminous Stratum. The core inspiration for this project comes from the context of Cairo itself. I viewed the city as a series of historic layers. My design intent was to mimic the stratification through a volume of sedimented light. The concept creates an independent system of stacked lamellas that hovers within the void of the existing building. The goal was twofold: to filter the harsh sun entering the large atrium, and to create a new spatial language without disturbing the original fabric. Initially, I envisioned the roof as a multi-layered pattern of varying sizes to filter light. However, the design direction shifted when I moved away from draping a pattern onto the building and instead pushed for the pattern to become the structure itself, where the layers are now functional steps and shading elements. The process begins by defining an initial mesh, creating mesh voids where the form needs to pull away from the historic structure. For the form-finding process, I established anchor points and defined on-curved codes for arcs and circles to control the footprint. I applied vertical loads positive z direction, pulling the mesh upward and creating the vaulted volume. Once the geometry was solved, the most critical step was sorting the mesh faces based on their normal vectors. The logic dictates the function of every panel. Vertical faces V around 0, these become structured lamellas used as walkable steps and shelving units for the market. Horizontal faces V around 1 are converted into gradient frosted louvers to control sun glare. These computational steps take us from a flat surface to the final volume. It is important to note that what you see here is a modular system. This specific vault is designed as a repeatable unit that arrays across the main market hall. However, the system is adaptable. For the very last vault in the sequence, I modified the workflow using different anchor points. This variation was necessary to generate a continuous staircase connecting the ground floor to the first level. As seen in step 5 and 6, the matched faces were sorted based on their normal vectors. Finally, as a result of the vaulted mesh, structure itself generated these extended market spaces and walkable surfaces. The path is visualized here on the first floor plan. I have also documented the iterations used to optimize the structure. I tested various load percentages on the initial mesh ranging from 15% to 75% vertical load. I also adjusted the domains for the frosted louvers and structural lamellas to find the right balance between shading and structural integrity. This section shows how the independent structure hovers within the void, leaving the historic walls completely untouched. The sedimented layers create a filtered light environment perfect for a market. The horizontal elements of the mesh serves as display shelves for goods and circulation path, integrating the program directly into the structure. The result is a complex form that is both structural and functional, an intervention that respects Cairo's history while introducing a new luminous layer of activity. Thank you.
Thanks everyone. Okay, would be lovely to go through another round of feedback. Anush, maybe you'd like to start first this time. You're on mute, by the way.
Sorry, can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, amazing. Um, yeah, I think I'll just start with the last one which we just saw. Charles, I love the explanation and the process. I think it's very well documented. And I also like the fact that you kind of created a computational workflow, and then as you can show that between different bays, you're able to adapt your process, and you're able to change a few parameters and your geometry changes. I think that's exactly what computational process and workflows are supposed to be, and it's very well documented as well. The only thing which I probably did not understand in this was what you mentioned about the staircase going up. Where was it going to? What was that doing? That's slightly unclear. Yeah, I
To
think
clear that point, Anuj, I think the idea was basically to use the same form to allow
yeah,
people to start going to different floors and the second level, let's say. So it's kind of using this as a kind of a natural ramp or natural staircase that people can actually, interact with. So that's the kind of the point of the mesh analysis as well.
got it. Was that for like potential future development or something?
I think this is what these shots trying to represent.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. And also, I like the fact that you're using the structure that you're creating as shells for the marketplace. I think that's quite nice as well. Um, with the third project with Nihant, um, I quite like the fact that you tried something different and created observatory towers as additional as additions to the market, right? What could have been again, just throwing ideas if the project was going ahead, but maybe you could have used the placement of the observatory towers as potentially as something that can bring light in where needed, because you already have some openings in your roof where you're bringing the light in, and then you have these different kind of places where you have observatory towers. Maybe you could have combined them. Maybe there could have been a logic which kind of dictates one to the other. um, but yeah, overall, great work there as well. With Giovanni's, I think I love the fact that you tried the Nubian waltz and slash the Catalan waltz. I mean, you guys are. Is this entire are people in Barcelona for the um for the seminar, or is it done online? I forgot.
It's completely online, so we
It's
have
completely
students
online.
from
Okay.
everywhere,
Okay.
literally. Yeah.
Okay. What I wanted to understand, or what could have been done better here is potentially the analysis that you did, the radiation analysis that you did. I think what you were trying to do was with the materials or with the density of the materials on the vault. Potentially, it could have been done at a macro level as opposed to a micro level, and then you could have potentially chosen which are walls and which are fabric curtains based on the radiation which you wanted to shade. That's something that could have you could have tried. Um, because it looks very linear, right? So one bay is all walls, and then the other bay is is the fabric. But you could have kind of done it with some kind of an analysis there, I think. And also, I have a question about the structure beam that you have for the vaults. Um, Again, maybe Catherine can take this up, but I imagine that these kind of vaults can be self-sustaining, or they can potentially they don't require an additional structure. So just to think about that. Um, and then the first one, David, if you could just scroll up. Um, yeah, the mesh relaxation again here. I think that's quite interesting. I think it's a bit similar to I think we've seen a few of these now. And I like the fact that you again explained the process, how you changed it, how you developed things differently. Um, and yeah, I like the renders as well. I'll give the other juries some extra time then.
Thanks, Anuj. Yeah, I think at some point as well, we explored this idea of topological interlocking and how you can actually carry a geometry like this using the structure friction between the modular elements that you're using to actually tessellate like a shell, which is kind of interesting to see how this works versus the beams as well. Anyway, I would like to maybe have Andre jumping in now.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah, we have
So
9 minutes left, so yeah.
I'll start from the first one by David. The first slide that you showed talking about diffuse skin market, I thought that this was going to be interesting. Because none of these projects so far have covered an important element, which is the acoustical well-being of the space. And with this skin, you have a chance to save the day, if you don't make it hard, of course. So this is, I would have loved to hear a bit more about, how the acoustics are considered in this project. In general, the kind of concave form that you make already plays a factor, but then the geometry that you have on all the cells of the skin, that's where it gets interesting. And I think you have a you didn't you could develop a very interesting thing about this. Moving on to the second project, I appreciate firstly the fact that we have considered how these very heavy curtains would be supported by some extra truss beams. I think that's great. I Again, there's so many calculations to be done about how necessary they are. I think the project is interesting. The only thing is, I'm not sure why you chose to explore the ground floor and the relation that it has to it, because you have such a symmetrical flow of these like arched vaults that face one direction, and they continue to do so. But then if you look on the inside, you have this like a blobby floor plan, which I'm not sure how it relates to either the outside of the building or the roof geometry that you've been developing. I mean, of course, you have the dips, the curves, but you kind of play with symmetry and then with lack of it in a way that I think can be slightly more harmonious. The third project by Nihan was quite interesting also. To be honest, you had me more up until those parasitic structures, because I was looking at your roof and I thought it was I tend to favor slightly simpler forms and shapes, and I think just your exploration of the hexagonal patterns and opening makes sense. But then you adding those observatory towers, it's a ballsy move. Many appreciate these parasitic architectural elements, but yeah, you just gotta be very delicate about these things. Finally, with Charles, I quite like this, and this makes a lot of sense actually. Like if we come back to talking about acoustical properties, you creating these different chambers and sort of breaking it up, and also playing with concave shapes, makes a lot of sense, because you give order and structure to the function of the market, which is nice, and you maintains the outside, which I really appreciate, because the market in itself is beautiful, and I think you've integrated both your computational exploration and the form very harmoniously. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Andre. Who wants to jump in there?
Maybe from my side, two general comments that I think these four presentations brought on the table is, as Andre was mentioning, the acoustics that we didn't speak about before, and yes, some of those projects, like the first one from David, and also the last one may have a lot of potential for that, and yeah, has been they have been caring or thinking, yeah, especially saying with David. Then the second topic is the double height and the thinking in terms of spatial of this sort of markets. Trying to take them, it's very interesting to explore the possibility of mezzanines or double heights that are connecting with the ground floor, and I think this is a topic that some of the projects in here, try to implement and did very, very well, especially with the project of Charles, that also this was covered with the computational method of the form integrating the staircase. I think that was brilliant as well. And then as a third general comment, I'll say the discussions in between when you're dealing with an existing structure, you can either be embedded and work very well with it and get very well integrated, or be like and decide to split apart and being very respectful, and just being as respectful in a way that you don't even touch it, in a way that also something gives a bit of a culture, or a bit of the lights up a bit the essence of the existing, which I think is also interesting in the image that we are seeing now, for instance, and also in David project is happening. So yeah, that would be my comments.
Thanks, Ness. Yona, you raised your hand earlier. Maybe.
Yeah, so I have a comment for everyone. Continuing on Anuja's comment about how we study environmental analysis, I noticed that everyone, and it's very common even in professional architecture, that when we're studying environmental analysis, we just forget about the surrounding buildings, and we end up seeing the building on a plot and everything is empty around it. It's so clean. So when we're studying the shadows and stuff, it's all in nice fabric. I feel like this is something that you have to take in mind, because if you're studying environmental analysis for the sake of creating patterns on the floors, these huge buildings around you would block everything that you need. You might even need reflectors to increase the light that you have inside. So I feel like this is something that you need to focus on more. But that's the major comment, I think.
Yeah, I was just like bring this image because it shows the phenomena that you're also talking about here, Yumna, which is very valid. Catherine?
Yes. So I'm not going to do it in order. So Giovanni, trusses they've been introduced. So I thought I'd touch upon it. I think that usually what happens when we retrofit this kind of existing building, especially trusses, even historical trusses from a long time ago, we tend to check the capacity, and it looks like your additional mesh is very lightweight. So I have a confidence that and hope that the existing structure will be able to take the loads. The trusses here I've drawn are actually quite chunky, so in a way, it probably wouldn't be required. Plus, your additional fabric that you're adding on, the meshes are perforated, and they're not taking on any significant additional loading, so I don't think it's required to have additional structures. But I like your reasoning behind it. I also find it interesting because you shared precedent of vaults and networking compression. Interestingly enough, in the sort of dome-like, arch-like surfaces that we've created, those wouldn't necessarily work in compression, and you would have a different kind of system that would work with a primary structure that would create the ribbing, or that would be something a bit more substantial. So you can think about the sort of like timber diagram kind of type of structures that are used there. The reason why I'm saying this is compared to your hanging fabric mesh and the ones that are arching. I know that you've kind of tried to share the differences in materiality and potentially mesh size and thicknesses, which is quite good because that represents how they're behaving differently. The platform that you've drawn, though, Mrs. Collins, but I'm conscious that that's just me with my structural engineer's hat on. If we look at some other ones, I think the one Nihan you've worked on, the mesh is interesting. However, I struggle to see how it would be supported below because it looks like a very thin fabric with lots of holes. So you would have a secondary frame supporting it that would be quite chunky, especially because you have quite large perforations. So you would have a secondary frame to deal with that. It looks more like a cladding than an inherent structural system. Charles, I found out I was intrigued by your form iterations plot and how you were talking about your carrying out an analysis, a comparison between structural integrity and being able to allow it to work for the light going through the porosity. One thing that I would say from what you've shown, because you have these arches, I would see a sort of hierarchy in the way you shaped it, even though you have a kind of shell. Either you would have a shell and then it would be a bit more complicated to analyze it structurally. So I'm just intrigued as to how you approach that. Or alternatively, because of its shape, you would also potentially have like a primary arches that would go into the page along sort of parallel into a longer direction axis of a building, and then have lighter, thinner rafters or act as secondaries. So it's something that I can see naturally occurring here. However, I do like how you've integrated your mesh with how you're supporting elements in the market. It's quite a nice touch. And finally, David, I I found the sort of end product, and I know that you were working and sort of comparing the different aspects of creating large and smaller openings. It just feels like a bit like it's cut out. I don't know. I'm I think there's something about it I'm struggling a bit with. I don't really know how to explain that because I'm not an architect. But it's a very lightweight structure, so it would be integrated very well with the existing frame. So that's a plus. That's quite a nice, easy system to engage with and install. But it's you would have to fill it up with air a lot of the time, which is something to consider for durability. That's it from me.
Thanks so much. I'm really enjoying all your comments here. Yeah, and let's move to the next group. I'm aware that we might be a little bit over time, but please, if you want to, if you have any other commitments, feel free to just say goodbye. And thanks for your time so far. Andre?
Could I just have 30 seconds to come back to Giovanni's project? So
yeah, definitely.
I worked quite a bit with fabrics, and they look great in renders, but in reality they look very different. And so like the arches that are not the catenary arches that are standing up, you only have one steel arc at the beginning and one at the top at the end. You would need one probably every 5 centimeters. Or you would need some sort of like a rigging line in between the 2 points to have them. But yeah, you know, these for fabrics to be held in a certain form, you need so much support, so much framework. So yeah, that's just something I'm adding.
No, thanks for adding this, Andre. Okay, to you, Angie, now.
Yep, batch 5 coming up.
2 more groups.
Hello, this is Simon Kipkeme. I'll be taking you through the complex forming project Pyramid of Shingles. So the design concept and computational systems for this is to try and mimic the biological patterning principles. And to achieve this, I'll be drawing examples from the shingle timber pavilion done by the ETH. So what I'll be trying to achieve is have a layered and overlapping surface pattern, leveraging on computational system principles like mathematical surface panelization and discretization, and surface tessellation. So to begin with, first study the project to understand what are the horizontal and vertical forces that I can leverage on. Did I identify the planes that are already existing that can be extracted further? Further to that, I went ahead and explored how the panels will look like when rotated, when panelized. Then to augment that, I also studied how these vertical horizontal forces can be utilized within the space itself and be utilized as a path for people to use. So the computational design methodology used here is first to define the boundary constraints of the project. The second step is to panelize the surface, then parameterize it by adding extents, by adding rotation, and by adding transformation logic, then applying a mathematical surface definition, and finally tessellating the open surfaces. So the first step was to define the extents, as you can see. Then the panels were defined in the second step. Then these were then extrapolated to form laps. So you can play around with the laps by adding a rotation parameter. Then once that was done, I did apply a mathematical surface rule, the sinusoidal modulated surface function, to give this an amplitude and a frequency that I can play around with. Once that was done, a region was defined between the open surfaces and the spaces in between, and this resulted to an opportunity to tessellate that surface as a permeable space for light to permeate through. So my former iteration took into consideration 2 surfaces, the solids and the voids. So the voids are in between the solid surfaces, and now this forms a composite surface that I was playing around with. The objective here was to try and have a balance of the solid and void spaces. I did iterate that from 0 2, 3, and 4, playing around mostly with the frequency and the amplitude and the number of panels that can be used. Then went further to now smoothen the surface and try to achieve a smooth finish where there's a good balance of interplay between the void and the solid spaces. So I ended up settling with step 07 and fine tune it for modeling purposes using step 08. So this is a sectional study of how the panels now come together. As you can see, there are several layers to this. There's a triangular trussing that I want to use to support to the existing structural system. And to augment this further, there'll be an undulating section truss as seen in step 4, which will now be the anchor between the panels and the existing structure. So these are basically the ingredients that I'll be using to actually actualize this project, in the sense that how does these panels that are waving anchored to the existing structure. Then finally, this is a form study on how you'll view the space from outside. So the same balance that was achieved on the roof is the same balance that we have on the facade, having sort of a solid and a void balance. So the first layer is a solid, mostly solid, punctuated with openings, but that also applies to the second layer, which is the roof. We have the solid that separates the roof and the glazing beneath it. Same applies to the internal view. Then for the aerial view, you could now see those undulating surfaces smoothening out to form spaces for light to pass through. So this solid void relation really came out well, like a sort of a balance between those two. So what you're seeing here is the front and the back facades. Then this is a close-up view of how light permeates into the surface. These are like slits, not open slits, but hidden slits that waves through with the surface, the main building surface, so that light can bounce or reflect into the market beneath. So this is what I was able to achieve for the pyramid of shingles. Yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Hello, today I'll be presenting my project about reviving barbell look. So the design concept start point was the circulation change of the market throughout the years. This change reminded me of the spice part of Istanbul. And when I looked at the bazaar, I saw that life was coming in between the walls, which also was similar to the high, and market was inspired by the high. And these all gave me an idea about forming some light vortexes towards the ground from the roof. For that, I wanted to inflate the roof and form holes and define holes on the ground so that vortexes can reach. So during my early explorations, I started with a circulation pattern, existing circulation pattern, and tried to define the vortex landings by working on the ground. Then I wanted to inflate the roof and combine the last two steps together. Here is the composition design methodology I have followed. First, I formed the meshes from the roof panels, then defined the holes for the vertexes on the panels, then inflated the mesh and adjusted the vortex landings. And as for the tents, I wanted to form the mesh, then define the hole for the light and air to come, and apply the force on the mesh to form a tent-like structure. These tents are supposed to be used by the sellers inside the market as shops. And during my form finding process, here we can see that I have used the roofing panels and defined the holes and inflated the roof. But unlike reaching to the ground, as I have foreseen, as I have wanted in the first place, I realized that trying to enter the hole points and the inner points of the holes I have made on the roof panels causes the structure of the roof to be disturbed. So instead of adjusting the points towards the negative direction, I have directed them upwards, which gave me this form. Here I tried some iterations, but unfortunately I couldn't compute more, so I was stuck with 2 iterations. And here we can see some interior and exterior images from the market space and some sections and plans. Thank you for listening.
Hello everyone, my name is Ahmed Baltaji and today I will be presenting my project for this course, Ancient Future Bab el-Louq, Cairo. My design concept begins by looking at the Giza pyramids, Khufu, Khafra and Mkaura. By mapping the exact positions of these 3 ancient monuments, I use their points as anchors for shaping a futuristic roof structure. These points generate 3 conic roof forms with precisely aligned circular light openings. The goal is to create an interior that feels mysterious and created, echoing ancient spatial logic while projecting a sense of the unknown future. It becomes a new landmark that bridges past cosmology and future architecture. The morphology starts by extracting the 3 pyramid coordinates and treating them as anchor nodes, lifting them, interpolating a curve through these points, making it the main factor in scaling and light ambience. And for same goes to the market with the same curve, the pathway of the market and journey is set. Form discovery. From these nodes, I perform conic lifting using kangaroo physics. Each point is surrounded by circles of different radii. These circles act as target points that pull the mesh upward. Then I triangulate a new mesh across the roof surface. Next, I interpolate a curve through these points. This curve becomes the driver for my pulling and scaling behavior. Each mesh panel's center is pulled a certain distance away from the curve. This pulling also controls how the triangular face scale. Through this process, I generate a series of roof panel iteration, each with different opening sizes and light qualities. Although the mesh behaves as a lightweight surface, it still required additional support. So I extracted the middle curve between those structures and transformed it into a series of 2D trusses with vertical supports that land cleanly onto the roof. The market below follows the same parametric logic. I begin with a triangulated ground grid, then pull it using the same interpolation curve. From there, I generated scale triangles, cull the smallest ones, and region union the remaining ones with fillet curves to create more human-friendly, smooth spaces. These union shapes are then extruded 3 meters from the market shops. On top of these shop volumes, I reintroduce the original triangles. Some become seating platforms, some rise to different heights, and some accommodate trees, creating a layered public experience. Because of the coordination of these 3 pyramid points are parametric, I can shift, rotate, and scale them, generating new interpolation curves. This allowed me to explore multiple roof iterations, each producing a distinct spatial character, which can then be imprinted onto the market layout as well. Some were specific to make a straight line, zigzag, and more, where we can see the coordinates displayed beside each iteration. Here is a celestial view of the project, rendered with a clay-like material on the roof, where the aligned circular openings reveal shafts of light falling onto the market. Then we have the traveler's view, like echo of the past being seen right over our noses. A spacious slice showing the relationship between the floating roof and the market beneath it, and then harmony between the chaotic market and the ground and the stress-free celestial glazing at the top of the shops with stairs as connectors. The sacred grid, a top view of the market. Finally, some 3D perspective of the inner run. Thank you.
Hello, this is Rami Ayoub, and I will be presenting the Monstre Merveille for the complex class. The project is inspired by the Kunsthaus Graz and its light wells combined with the ancient Egyptian architecture that will highlight the artwork market in my project, which I will explain later. And finally, the traditional soup typology. The concept focuses on preserving the order of the original architecture while inserting a new system that acts almost like a parasite, adapting, wrapping, and growing within it. The name Le Monstre Merveille reflects this duality, a structure that appears complex and almost monstrous in form, yet create a delicate, controlled, and human interior experience. For my workflow, the three elements created follow the same form finding using congruous, slightly different setups. For the central area, which is in the top, the approach after using congru was to create a triangulated tiling that close at the end and open in the center of the space, using the pull point and the scale to get the final shape alongside with the main structure using the multi-pipe, while the side area consists of the kangaroo and truncation approach. And for the separator area, it followed the same architecture as the central roof system, with the difference of the final tiling approach created using the Perlon noise in Python, and followed by a cull pattern based on certain point to create sort of gates to the balconies. From there, the process consists on creating the central roof lighting system, followed by the separator to create a wrap inside the project, then adding the multi-level side circulation, which on it, the light wells are defined. And finally, I have the market functions and landscaping. For the form iteration, I worked on the roof skin by playing with the parameter of move, then the length line to control the deformation of the surface, then the trisub to control the density of the pattern, and finally scale with the domain that defines the void in each pattern. While the separator skin, I have the scale that control the size of the noise pattern, octaves that control the complexity of the noise, the time for the animation or evolution of the noise. In other ways, it changed the overall texture of the element. And finally, the start and end which define output value for the easing function. In this section here, it shows how the project is working together from architecture and computational view, where every area is interacting with the other. The project creates a sequence of light, shadow, and movement. Moving to the plan division that followed the same spirit of triangulated shape, with greenery, water element, markets, and the central maze circulation, while the side circulation, which is the place for the artwork market, is located on several levels with small balconies that penetrate the separator skin. And finally, some perspective during the day showing the different part of the project. Here also there is the aerial view at night reflecting the lights from inside out, and followed by interior night view of the space. And finally, here's a quick walkthrough inside the project where we see the sun path and how it's affecting the lighting strategy of the entire space.
Hasham, you're muted.
Okay, thanks everyone. I would like to invite Catherine to start this time.
Sure. Okay, so Simon's one, I really liked it. I think it's a very beautiful concept. I have some questions though, however, regarding how it's being supported. I feel like it's quite challenging because you're having an existing array of trusses and the roof steel structure is consistent. Whereas here in reality, when you're trying to create that profile, you wouldn't be able to work with that profile. But it's just about how would you factor that in, so you can have additional steel posts to vary the height, and then the new roof, the new skin they've proposed would work quite well with the new imposed structure. You're not varying that much as well. The loads are applied, so that's actually quite a neat solution. And I like the way that you've developed the shape. I think it's light touch, elegant, and does the job. And it's a neat solution, and I like your iterations as well with the geometry. So it's a good idea and good work. For the next one, I think I was a bit what I what I struggled with a bit is materiality. I think we're lacking a bit of images and sort of the concept is clear, but maybe it could be conveyed more with more views and perspectives and a stronger narrative as to how to achieve the ideas. So there is some kind of loose idea behind it, but it would be nice to actually have more substance to be able to support that concept to make it buildable and feasible. For Ahmad's idea, so I like how you've incorporated additional structure to support it. It makes sense, and you would normally have a quite a inherent working shell with the form found surface you've created. However, what I struggle a bit with is we basically have an infinitely thin mesh, and that would not really work, especially if you look at the spatial slice on the right. You can see that the perforations would actually, if you're looking at using a tensile fabric, um, having such big holes, and especially the holes having sharp corners, it's an engineer's worst nightmare because you're pulling on a fabric with sharp corners, which will create lots of stress concentrations, and that would essentially tear. So it's maybe you're trying to create the perforations, but it would be something more like a Fryer-Otto kind of timber diagram type approach, and then think of having a fabric that has maybe translucent and solid opaque facets that would create that translucency and transparency. Raming's work, I think. I actually really liked how you responded to existing structure by using that existing frame, the arrangement, the rhythm of the grid. You really infused it with your imagination, creativity, and thought about the different aspects and different requirements for it. You can really see it for your renders at nighttime. I think that really conveys the concept behind your design very strongly. I think that story that you're telling is very convincing. I also like how you've shown those walkways that travel through the space. I think it's a very good idea, and I think also that the structure that you've given, the frame for the faceting, is something that would be sensible, a sensible approach. I'm less sure as to how we would make the vertical panels work because we're working against gravity here, so it would have to be some kind of more solid, inherently rigid frame. So maybe some polycarbonate shell or something different. But I think all of these projects require some development in terms of materiality to make it sure that what you're designing works well and marries well with the appropriate material. Sorry, I went on a bit long here.
No, don't worry. It was very interesting to hear feedback. Okay, moving to Yomna, maybe.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt something just to clarify something about the mesh?
Yes.
Who's speaking? Sorry.
Ahmed, he is
This is
the owner
Ahmed.
of this project.
Yeah.
Sorry for interrupting, but Catherine, this is actually not an actual tensile structure. This was meant to be something as lightweight GRC, something that it's supposed to be prefabricated and just compiled and built on site. So this wasn't supposed to be intended to be a tensile structure.
Well,
So
exactly.
it's
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah.
sorry. Did you say it's a GFRC?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So GFRC, it's with the openings. So would that be glazing? Did you talk about glazing? Was that you?
I didn't mention the glazing, but yes, you're correct. This is glazed.
Okay. So the it's a bit tricky because GFRC is glass fiber reinforced concrete panels. It's very brittle. So we don't tend to have it it would be very heavy. And it's quite unusual to see this kind of diagram shape form with GFRC because the openings would be openings and the glass panel wouldn't technically work as as structural elements of glass, and you would want to work this as a whole form of shell. So you could do this in concrete entirely, and you would do it in situ and form a concrete shell. But having something modular, you would make it work a lot harder because it would have to sit on another frame, a secondary frame that would actually do the work. So GFRC panels for this kind of application would have to be integrated with some kind of secondary structural frame to work with that shape.
Yeah,
It
just
wouldn't-
about to say in both cases, I would imagine that you would need still to have the die-grid structure
Yes.
framing like as a second layer to the shell, whether it's
Or
tensile
yes,
structure or like GFRC or like kind of other materials as well.
but you could do it in spray concrete.
Yes, exactly. That's a
and
different
and
approach. Yeah.
and the openings could potentially work, but it's still very tricky. But you could work. A good example, for example, you could look at is the Smithfield poultry market. It's a different kind of shell, but it's something similar where you have oculus, like large glass openings. But once again, these if you're looking at something like concrete for this thing, modular would be slightly challenging to not have a secondary frame to support it. So in that case, if you're doing something like a concrete, you would look at a monolithic shell system.
Thank you.
Thank you for your input, by the way.
Anush?
So I'm gonna keep
Yeah,
it
Yona, please. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep it short and sweet because I have a meeting that started a few minutes ago. Okay, so this comment is basically inspired by Simon and Rami's projects. So I love the iterations that we're experimenting with paneling and everything because that's what parametric and computational design is all about. However, I have a comment that applies actually for everyone, that when you're iterating, it's nice to have some sort of constraint or something that you want to achieve from those iterations. Because if you keep iterating for many, many times, like you could iterate for a million times and still not achieve something because you're looking for the form. And form is subjective. You may change your mind tomorrow even. But if you have a specific constraint or an objective that you're looking for, then it could be more applicable. So if in Simon's proposal, it was to optimize light, maybe he should have tried like every possible thing that optimizes light, and then we could look at it. But yeah, that applies to everyone, and I really enjoyed the jury, but I have to go. I'm sorry.
No, thanks so much, Yona. I appreciate we are going over time. There's one group left, but yeah, I will share with you the mirror board as well. You can leave any comments if you would like to still speak to those students. But yeah, thanks, Yona.
Thank you.
Yes,
Sham.
Anush, feel free to
Yeah.
jump in.
Right. I would like to start with Simon as well. I think I love the presentation. I really liked the way you explained the structure, and it seems like you really do understand what you're talking about. And all the way from like concept to development, like your concept stayed very clear, and I really appreciate how elegant your end product is as well, right? Yeah, I think I also agree with Catherine's comments about the structure bit could slightly be more developed, but I think for 3 weeks I think it's brilliant. Like to move to Emmett. Um, I think the concept is quite interesting. I just feel that I would have loved to see how you integrated that concept with the existing structure a bit more, as opposed to what it feels like to me that you have developed it regardless of what's happening on the site, and then it's just sitting on top of it, and then you're connecting it somehow with the existing structure. It could have been quite interesting to see how that concept kind of married with the existing structure as opposed to just be on top of that. But that's just a slight comment on that. And Rami's, I feel I like that you're looking at light, both from daylighting and also like how you're showing like the night view outside perspective and how the light from inside is going to affect the outside, like the neighboring buildings. I think I find that quite interesting. And I also like the micro patterns that you're creating on the roof itself. I just have a slight comment or what I don't understand all all of it is probably like the side curtains that you're doing. Also, I feel like they're in your renders, they're kind of clashing with the structure. I don't know if you thought about that or if there's any further thoughts behind that, but maybe that's something that could potentially be thought a little bit more. And with the second project, Zainab, um, I understand that there was less time, but I really feel that uh, like I think the ideas could probably be communicated slightly more and kind of like explained slightly better. Um, the overall concept, or at least the start of the concept was strong, but it probably could have been done a bit more, I guess. Thanks. Hisham, I also have another meeting which I'm actually running, so I might also drop off after this.
Thanks so much for your time,
Sorry.
Anush. Yeah,
Yes, thanks.
again, feel free to check the other projects and leave comments for the students so they feel like you've also kind of reviewed their work. But thanks so much for your time, and sorry for running over time again. Okay, going to Ines or Andre.
Yes, so from my side, a very short comment. I appreciate very much in the last two projects the effort of integrating the layout. I think this is, yeah, this is difficult, but for a market at the end, the functionality and the layout is everything. Especially in the second one, where also it's integrated not just with the stands or the piece of or the boxes, but also with the interspaces that will occur in the market. And I think this was done in a very yeah holistic way, and I think found this very interesting. Also, another comment, and that's I'm jumping to Simon's to the first project in here. What I liked the most is that from beginning to end, I could see the feasibility of this project, and I think that's also something that that is great, because you can already imagine how you would fabricate it, how you would send everything. That makes it real in a way, and especially when showing the images that you're achieving this sort of 3D, two-dimensional or free-form shape of the roof, but at the same time is built out of flat sheets. I think this is very interesting, and also the strict logic of the strips that you defined. I think that also works very well with the existing and with the rationale of the existing. And also that the concept initially was very simple, like from a triangle, which is the most basic, after the capes, I would say, the most basic way of shading ourselves or protecting ourselves. And from that, the full story. So yeah, good work, all of you. Yeah.
Thanks, Ines. Yeah, I was just dying to basically explore like a different connection with the existing structure, especially at both the ending and the start points, because I think here this could have been improved a little bit. But yeah, I couldn't agree more with what you said. Andre?
Yeah, very interesting project. I'll start with Simon's also. The moment you showed the timber shingles and organic, I was like, oh my God, because those are the worst, the absolute worst job for any builder or a carpenter or a fabricator is to do a million types of different shingles and try to rationalize this. You then went on to explain your logic, which I actually really appreciated. And I like your form iterations. My favorite one is actually first and second. I'd like to learn a bit more about, the statistics that you're showing, like what the frequency means in this case, and the amplitude. I'm a bit confused about those, but perhaps we shouldn't spend too much time on this. I also really appreciate that you showed the sectional study and you provided us, some some trussing ideas that you have here. My slight thing is that I feel, and this is more of a design choice, which, there's no right or wrong, but You're breaking this into an interesting geometry on the sides, but the front and the back feel very static compared to the sort of organic feel that you're trying to provide with the front. And I see on your back faced view that you have some sort of layering on the back, but it just doesn't seem to connect as much. The ratio of excitement on the sides versus the front, but that's just a designer thing. Regarding the project by Zeynep, I was trying to understand it. I couldn't really figure out some elements. For example, the relationship between the tents and the roof. I mean, I see that both are mounts. There's some symmetry. Yeah, I'd like to learn a bit more about that project. Regarding Ahmed's project, there has been a lot said, especially the structural comments. I also had a few concerns. I mean, this thing is massive. And in this case, the form that you're taking into the catenary, trying to justify this by the structure being catenary, the fact that you have such sort of, it's like if they were very thin spikes, that would be more structurally understandable. And maybe you could justify it by, drawing some like side pillars they're strong frames, but this seems and from an engineering point, at least to me, it seems like a complex one. Finally, jumping onto Rami, I like this project a lot. It's very clean. It's very sort of controlled, and I like that how you use the symmetry and you break it with those paths in between the red stairs and like volumetric walks. But I must say that, at least from the context perspective, I feel like we left Cairo and went to Dubai or Riyadh or something like that. This no longer feels like a food market to me. This feels like a lobby of a new hotel. And I feel that's a bit of a shame to drift from the initial context, but that's also not exactly the point here. The computational exploration here is quite interesting, and I like that you sort of balance the triangulation as a theme from trusses to the paneling. Yeah, I think, and also how you work with the concave forms. We must be quiet over time. Apologies for that.
Amazing, Andre. No, thank you so much. Okay, let's move to the last group. And thanks so much for Andre, Ines, and Catherine for staying that long. Okay, Angie, up to you.
Yep.
Angie, please, if we have any video that's exceeding 4 minutes, we can maybe speed up or just cut the video at a certain point. So maybe let's keep an eye on the last batch.
Okay, no problem.
Thanks.
So here we see this set of images. It's the Warsaw Museum, and it was my actual inspiration. And the idea was to create a soft inflatable mesh using pressure with Kangaroo that would actually blend into the existing market of Babadook, adding a soft and playful touch while conserving the initial structure. So I created a set of curves along my roof and then used the edges as anchor points. And using pressure, I created my actual mesh. So I wanted to add to it this motif. So I did mesh strips, diagonalized, and then I added this horizontal lines to have this diamond-like shape. And then I created my mesh from Weaverbird mesh from lines. And here I wanted to have continuity from the roof to the actual ground. So I projected the same curves as circles, scaled them, ruled surface, and then I did the same mesh simulation and added the same pattern as well. So here we see the result. As for the plan, like on the image below, I thought it would be interesting to have these cafes and the shops and places where people could actually sit that would be created around my newly created structure. So that part is like linear, and then on the middle I just created a curve, an organic curve, and set my shops along that curve. So here we see the results and the shadowing effect.
Hi, so my name is Eva Vasilevska and this is my project for the complex forming on the topic of light, path and structure. The most interesting part about Bubble Loop Market is its metal structure that organizes the space. It's a typical example of tectonic architecture with its lightweight, thin elements assembled together. This project celebrates the metal structure of the market by playing with its opposite, the stereotomic architecture. Stereotomic architecture is often full, heavy, and deals with volumes, masses, and permasses. This project is built on the border between them. It focused on the empty volume, but it's filled with light, movement, and immersive space in order to offer a rich experience for its users. The workflow starts with filling the center nave with voxels. Then the volumes of the existing shops are used to cool the vortexes. In this way, the negative space of the shops remains as a memory in the market. Filling up the space with voxels means that the primary circulation is pushed to the perimeter of the building in the side wings, which later becomes the logical place to introduce a new space for shops. Since the main space is very rigidly organized by the voxel grid, which is completely orthogonal, the movement induced inside could be completely free, dynamic, and chaotic, another element that celebrates its rigid orthogonality with its opposite. The roof is tessellated with inverted Druckett pyramids to filter the sun rays inside. Those pyramids are additionally scaled with Perlin noise factors to introduce more dynamic in the sun rays filtration. The sun rays on the 22nd of February, as in the Abu Simbel solar event, are used to guide the coloring of the voxels inside. On the inside, the new structure is light but intense, but on the outside, it has no presence in the surrounding. In the grasshopper workflow, as inputs were geometries from the market directly in Rhino and the sun rays from Ladybug. First, the tessellation of the roof was done by creating a set of surfaces that got scaling by the Perlin noise factors. Parallel, the main space was filled with voxels and tested with points for the volumes of the shops. The mesh was colored by calculating the distances from the center of the voxels towards the sum of the vectors for the sun rays, and those distances were used to guide the gradient coloring. Orange was used to symbolize the desert and blue for the sea. Here are some iterations for the roof tessellation where few parameters were tested from the Perlin noise. For the voxels, I was experimenting with the direction and the voxel size. This is a section study where we can see that although the center space is filled with voxels, it's still empty to explore with the main movement on the perimeter of the building. The plane view shows the little public spaces that are created from the negative space of the shop, like little hidden squares to step into. Also shows the dynamic movement pattern that can happen despite of the orthogonal grid. And here are some visuals. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Andrea Cutroni and I will present the project for the new never-ending Cairo market. The design is grounded in two main concepts. The first is the differential growth, a natural process that generates smooth and organic curves. This principle is applied to both the circulation system and the roof geometry. The second concept is the Cairo tessellation, a traditional paving pattern widely used in the city, and this pattern was rebuilt parametrically, starting from a square and then mirroring it, and is applied to the roof surface. The circulation layout is defined starting from the rectangle based on the existing steel structure. The lines are traced to connect the main pedestrian flows from the four entrances of the building and along the principal axis, And these lines were then discretized and processed through dynamic relaxation using Kangaroo, generating smooth polylines through simulated sphere collisions. By offsetting these curves, the main paths of the market are created, and two of these paths were vertically displaced to form ramps leading to the first floor and creating spaces for storage and stores beneath the sloped path. By changing the parameters of the line length and the circle radius, it was possible to explore different amplitudes and frequencies of the curves, and the final result allows to find paths that elegantly avoid the existing structures with fluid movement. For the roof geometry, the process started from a flat mesh onto which the Cairo tessellation is applied, and the frame size of the pattern can vary, and to give more dynamism to the surface, the mesh vertices can move vertically, and these variations are driven by an heat map based on the proximity to the main path, and in this way areas closer to the circulation zones have the minimum frame size and receive more deformation. And when applied to the marked roof, this method transformed the previous flat surface into a much more expressive structure with openings that align with the flows below. Looking at the final plans and sections, we can appreciate how the different paths and vertical connections interweave through this organic system of route and ramps, all linked together in a fluid way that encourages visitors to explore the spaces and spend more time within them. The exploded view shows how the new roof is supported by a structural framework that follows its curvature, and finally, the interior views at various times of the day illustrate the atmosphere of the space, shaped by light, natural curves, and with the rhythm of the traditional Cairo tessellation. And here is a small video of the new never-ending Cairo magnet. Thank you for listening.
My name is Elena Corio. This is Bibal Noor, which means carpet of light, my proposal for reviving Bab al-Louk market in Cairo. The project is built on 4 ingredients: walls, which creates rhythm and volume, patterns applied to the walls, overlapping layers, and light. This list is the main protagonist of the project. The design is composed of 4 layers: a new interior layout, a timber shell, the existing cell structure, and a new exterior roof. The diagram shows the workflow with color coding for each part. In gray are the constraints that guided the form-finding process: the existing cell structure, entrances, and roof base. Kangaroo plugin was used for dynamic relaxation and Ladybug for solar irradiation analysis. Different methods and patterns were applied for tessellation of interior and exterior layer. I will now illustrate the steps. The interior begins with a new exhibition space. Circulation paths connect the main entrances with the elevated area. Multi-level stores are organized along the central axis. The timber shell starts from an initial mesh and anchor points. Through dynamic relaxation, a follicular form is obtained. Phases of the mesh are then cooled to define the main model, which is repeated across the market. Different curvature emerge depending on mesh size and load factor. The pattern begins with hexagonal grid, converted into a 3-axis system. Midpoints are shifted to create variation. Columns act as singularities and attractor points, introducing gradients in the pattern. Finally, the pattern is projecting onto the mesh. Panels are closed and repeated across the walls. Different design options were explored, changing the grid size and the deviation from the X-grid pattern. For the exterior roof, base meshes are created for each bay. Mesh relaxation is applied again, and tessellation is achieved with box morph, repeating square tiles across the roof. The solar irradiance analysis informs the grouping of panels into 3 types: high exposure, low transparency; medium exposure, medium transparency; low exposure, high transparency. The final outputs includes plan views of the different levels, cross-sections along the 2 axes, interior views showing the shop layouts, and an exterior view. Thanks for your attention.
Hi everyone, it's Mahmoud and I'm happy to present you a complex project, final project. The name of my project is G2 Skin, which touching the color tones of Egypt's DNA. We'll come to this terminology later. Next, having a look to the history of Egypt and how this history is rich with a huge diversity of tools and arts and also monuments. So this could be a huge source of inspiration to this project, especially the project represents an historical place. We'll start by site analysis and see how the existing building, some photos, and also to see the conditions regarding the heat, radiation, and some analysis for the project. And we found that the project, due to the design of the roof itself, it gained a huge amount of heat radiation through the year also. So we start to think about how to manipulate with this roof with keeping the existing structure. We can see in the diagram underneath here, start to crack or manipulate with the roof to start to respect the sun path to prevent the radiation and allow for the north light. Here we start our parametric study and say like parameters and constraint. The parameters here we start with deforming the grid, and then to see how this grid will work with the sun to prevent the heat radiation and allow for the north light by creating this kind of cascade, which this cascade prevents the sun radiation but allow for the north light. As I said, we have done many iteration, and to validate this iteration, we start trying kind of analysis using LiDiPAC to see how this speaks with environment like sun radiation and also daylight analysis. And also I put another parameter, which is the height of the roof itself, not to exceed a certain height. So we create like a multi-objective thread problem. So I use Vallacy as a multi-objective algorithm to resolve this kind of problem to find the most optimum solution, which matches the function and also the aesthetics. After many iterations and analysis, I have chosen one of the optimum solution. On the right hand side here, we can see it's a balance between natural light, balance between heat gain radiation and also sunlight, and also not exceeding the maximum height. I put like 10 meters. Then I start to implement our architecture, seeing how does it work with this kind of patterning, like triangulation. This triangulation, as I highlighted before, about this kind of color tone coming from the Egyptian history. This tone, which is lifelong tone, happening through from pharaohs till now. Here you can see some axes, some renderings, and also how the pattern on top of the roof works and how the gradient of this tones happens. Here we can see some interior experience, interior shots, how this color triangulation, how the glimpse of the markets underneath, and also on the right hand side there is an axo, and the exploded axo shows how the new structure speaks with the old structure also, and the zoning underneath for the market. Finally, I have this section which shows how the new structure and how the roof, however it's a little bit complex, how they're still respecting what's happening for the existing roof, by adding like a sub layer. to maintain the historical roof as it was required from the brief. Thank you, everyone.
Amazing. Such a nice ending as well. Thanks everyone for your efforts, and I'm moving now to the mirror board, and it's a free-for-all session. So whoever wants to start first. Okay, Andre, please start.
Sure. These were 5 projects, right? I lost count.
Yeah, we cheated a little bit. Sorry. Yeah.
Nice. So I'll start with, let me just go back to the mirror. I'll start with the first one by Hala. First, I quite like just the elegance of the roof. I think in general, you're kind of repeating of these curved, slightly inflated panels. I think it's both structurally and aesthetically, it's a win of a solution. You kind of lost me at the pillars because I don't think those are needed. I feel those are, well, the pillars that hold that roof on the sides, I don't feel like those are needed. And I wonder how much they are needed in the functional aspect of the whole market, but that's a separate conversation. But in general, this is where I would love, and I know it's not about it, but I would love to learn more about materiality of this. This is so achievable, and I think just a little bit of a thought process on that, like how do you prepare those laser cut sheets of aluminum to make those forms? I think that would be the next step for this project, but it's a very nice and clean approach. I love the symmetry. I love the use of the curvature. So moving on to Eva's project, this is where I'm scratching my head a little bit because you talk about lightness and you talk about movement. So if this is interior and if you don't have any wind, there's no movement. And if there is movement from the wind, this might cause issues actually. Like I remember I had something similar where I was designing these heavy curtains that were flowing with the wind, and I dropped the design up until when I realized that they would disrupt the flow of people. They would be a bit annoying to actually be hit with a curtain in the face, or in your case, a rope or whatever is hanging down. I wonder what kind of material you were thinking about this, but yeah, this is just something to consider. You're basically taking away a lot of volume of the interior space, which is counterproductive to what the market would be as a structure, especially that the truss and the roofing so far has made it so that you can have all this central space without any pillars taking up the space. And so you have this large volume that feels grand. And here it feels like you're taking that away. But anyways, moving on to Andrea's project. What I really appreciate about this is that you designed the roof based on the flow of the people. And I like how uh, the paths that you generated with the differential growth drive the roof shape. I think that's an interesting just design process and form finding approach in general to begin with. This is something that goes to say for many projects. Something that's not it's not the focus of this course. I know it's about complex forms, but I've graduated MA-CAD and I was loving complex forms, and then I went into the real world and I realized that the biggest limiting factor in all these things is the budget, right? Because every time you introduce any type of variation and you break up a symmetry, you are you have to pay more to engineers, you have to pay more to builders and fabricators and everyone else. And this project here, you introduce such small say like noise. Well, actually, it's not so small, but you introduce noise to a fairly sort of stable flow of the structure, and that just raises the price by probably 20 times fold. And that's just something to consider when you're designing anything. But regardless, what I think that the main strength of this project is your idea to take the circularity on the ground floor and translate that into the roof. I think that's quite interesting. Moving on to Elena's project. I'm liking this. I like your idea of the vaults and exploring the patterns. I like how you started exploring the space on the interior as a layout and how you started breaking it down. And the thing that I'm gonna tell you is I want to know how you're making that frame with timber, because I don't know how that would be with timber. In terms of both like the bent elements, and I don't know if you're going for some CLT or how you would do this, but this seems very, very difficult to do with timber. It seems easier or more manageable rather to do it with some lightweight metal sheets, maybe aluminum. The structural engineers in the group could tell you more about this. But I like your sort of idea of using two layers, your timber shell and then the roofing, the blue roof. I also wonder how necessary that is, but that's also a different question. And am I leaving someone before going to
The
Mahmoud?
fifth project, yeah. No.
Mahmoud, I really liked your project, and also I appreciate the fact that you used Wallacey. I think that's one of the most important tools that we can teach in complex forms. The use of multi-objective optimization is so important, and here you're tackling good points from lighting to well, I think it was. Were you focusing on anything else besides lighting, besides solar and the optimization? Was there any other fitness objective? Well,
Those are,
regardless.
yeah, I'm sharing the slide for the parametric methodology.
Yeah. Yeah, so nice. And I like that you repeat the geometry, because again, this is what makes it much more buildable and much easier to approach from any building perspective. It looks beautiful. I like your choice of color actually, and I like your idea of maintaining. I've seen triangles basically in all of these projects, I think, but which works great, especially in much of the um, Islamic architecture. You see a lot of triangles, even from the truss systems that you have here. So I think it's great. I really like this project. I liked all the projects. Great work, and I mean it's so impressive. Props to Hisham and to Angeliki for teaching such complex concepts. I remember from my time in MACAD, we had no Python in complex forms. Thank God, honestly, but that would have confused me a lot. But these are so impressive to carry out in 3 weeks or whatever you export. So
Yeah,
congratulations
we take less
everyone.
credit here, but thanks, Andre. Amazing. Yeah, Ines?
Yes, I'll go through some short comments, and Kat, feel free to jump in some of the projects and if you feel like. So first, congratulations to all again. Great work. Going to the first one, to Hala, I agree with Andre. This is a project that is very clear from beginning to end, and with a very nice close up of the initial concept. And I think that's very well achieved. And sometimes when working with these methods, is very easy to get lost in the middle of the way. So well done. A comment to that may apply to other projects as well, and I think that we've been not speaking too much about it, is drainage, and this is the main requirement of a roof. And that's something that it would be great to have it integrated, as is the main purpose of protective. And in the cases where we have different models, and at the end either pyramids or more bulbs, the water is going to be accumulated in the edges. So to think about how this water is going to come out will be something interesting to implement as well. Then, yeah, moving to the second one, I think I found it a project that is like more poetic in a way. It may not be answering the question of the functionality of a market, but more, I would imagine more as a space, more as an exposition space or something that could lead different other functions, I would say. What I like it, something that was explained a bit that I liked quite a lot is the fact of doing a very small touch of integrating this sort of I don't know if the materiality again here, but if it's like cloths or strips along the grid side that will force the circularity to work in a way that you think that that is the best for the purpose. So with this slight touch, you are sort of generating this circularity, and I think that's architecturally very powerful. Yeah. Then moving to Andrea's one. Yeah, I agree totally with Andre. It's great to see the circulation and the crowds of the people of the pathways being reflected in the roof. Also, when I saw the Cairo pattern, this is like the perfect project to apply a Cairo pattern. And it's true that when projecting the Cairo pattern for all the surfaces that are either flat or that are inclined, so that are flat as well, that would be great because maybe on top of also what Andre was saying of fabrication and cost and buildability, yeah, it's crazy to think that you can build it up from a single tile, at least the cladding or the final layer of the roof. It's true that in some of the areas this is not happening, but it's always the compromise between free form sometimes and standardization. So I think in this project, in some of the areas, it will be possible to have a very standard, unique piece, and in some other areas, maybe a bit more control. Yeah, it will be something more bespoke. And then, yeah, going to the Elena's project, I liked very much the clearness of splitting the two layers, one for meeting the interior purposes and the other for the roof. Here again, maybe the comment of the drainage. Well, actually, yeah. Not actually here. It may be solvable quite more easily in a way, but yeah, sort of the same thing. And something that maybe it's a comment, and I think is something that we encounter a lot in when designing freeform, when dealing with freeform shapes or this complex forms, is when projecting a regular grid to a freeform shape. This is always a question mark. This is always very tricky to handle, and because at the end, although you have a standard and completely the same pattern on projected, once you are projecting it, you end up having very different elements that, if those are working structurally, may be a bit tricky to deal with. And yeah, I'll say then moving to the last one, I really like the project as an overall storytelling, and also the final results of covering with these sort of pyramids that are, again, are repeated. I think is beautiful, and also how it looks and the final section. It's very convincing and appealing. So yeah, good job. And yeah, maybe on that. Yeah, I think that will be it from my side. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Ines. Let me stop the timer before it makes the noise and
In 44 seconds.
yeah.
Should I go ahead? I'll go ahead.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay. So Hala, I think following Andre's comments and everyone's comments, I think it's very doable. It's actually one of the ones where you look at it and you're like, okay, it's I think from all the projects that we've seen so far, there are different degrees of how realistic the proposals are, and I think it's fine if you can use these tools to create cool visuals, but the reality is to be able to design something that has an effect on people at the real world scale. So scale is one big thing, and secondly as well, fabrication buildability. How does it translate into real life? So being able to see your work and then be able to translate that into something real is a very good way of gauging how far to push your work and what you need to do to get it to that point. So I think this is quite a good example. Even as one, I think, following Inda's comments about how poetic it is, I think initially I wasn't sure about where this was taking me until I saw actually the renders. And I think it's very interesting because in a way you're really showing how it's quite clever actually, the notion that you applied a vertical element of translucent material to deal with light, because light very rarely comes down perfectly vertically. We sometimes forget about that, and I think it's very creative and imaginative to tackle it that way. It's very subtle, but also structurally, it's very easy to implement. And talking about wind, because structural engineers deal with wind all the time. It's our worst nightmare. Because you have a market space like this, and you have openings, so doors and everything throughout, and of the way it's shaped. And I'm not sure if you have, it looks like, but I'm not sure if you have openings at roof level. You will have wind, like uplift effect, like chimney effects, or things where wind will sometimes push. You have negative and positive pressures depending on the shape, depending on the wind direction. So it might have an effect on the material depending on how lightweight it is. So I think it's actually a very light touch, but well, it's actually much more powerful than what it set out to be at the beginning. So I quite like it. Andrea's work, like everyone's comments about how it responds to the circulation pattern. I think that's really clever. One thing about I like very much how you thought about a support structure. It would work, but I would actually argue that it could even reduce the support structure and make it more lightweight. So that's something that you could look at. So have like vertical posts and ties potentially. It's not working as hard as the initial truss, and you're not adding that much load to it. And also talking about like how every panel is different, and that sort of like customization of the shapes. You could always rationalize it. So you could like sort of break it down to a grid where you say, okay, every panel.
Hope she comes back.
Half meters
Yeah.
by half a meter or a meter by a meter, and just say, okay, we're going to. Oops, sorry.
You're back now. Don't worry.
Or a meter by. Am I back? I froze again.
Yes, you're
Hello,
back now.
hello.
Yeah.
I'm back. Hello, test.
Hello.
Okay,
Yes,
sorry,
we hear you.
My signal is dying. I don't know why. Okay, so I was saying there could be a thing where you just rationalize it into like larger panels and say, okay, we'll just have 4 or 5 types, and then you will vary those and still manage to find some way to replicate that kind of pattern, but by reducing it to units or discretized like half a meter or 1 meter units. Lydia's work. So I can see how you got the Centre Pompidou Metz kind of Shigeru Ban Glulam thing going. But sadly, structurally, it's a lot harder to make it work here because of the lack of continuity. So your elements, because of the shapes that you've implemented in your pattern, and you can see as well. I think if you visually compare 2 models, this has a lot more voids, so it's going to be a lot harder to make it work. But there would be ways. Once again, it's about scale. It's about how to make sure that you make it to a scale where it looks like it's responding well to what.
Yeah, I totally agree on that point.
Yes, and then Mahmoud's piece. I think that I really liked it. I think the storytelling of your boards, the way you have explained your rationale as to how you've developed the shape, the parametric optioneering is very clever. It feels like you're not just doing something for the sake of doing it. It's backed up by the purpose, the brief, the how you're trying to make your design make sense for its purpose, and just adding something for the sake of adding it. And I think also actually that you can remove the if you work with a creative structural engineer, you can remove the internal framing that you've drawn because the shape you have drawn is actually inherently could work. It's a folded plate structure. It's actually that way that you've created the shapes, the volume, the way they fit together will enable it to work quite well structurally. So there would be ways of removing all the secondary framing, which I think is really cool. And the patterning, I think it's just very well thought through. The scale looks right. You can make it, you can assemble it, you can have it in modules. I think it's a very sensible, beautiful, light touch yet creative, well balanced solution. So well done. And I just wanted to say to everyone, um, I feel like I can say a lot of like what comes across as constructive feedback, but I think sometimes I leave out the compliments. We've all done amazing work, like everyone said, in such a short span of time. I think key takeaways and the purpose I think of juries is to give you things to think about if you had more time or in the future. But key takeaways, I think being able to have renders that make people when they look at it have instantly an understanding of what material it is, the scale, how things are volumetrically, because it's fine if you work on a computer on 2D surfaces, but how does it translate in real life? That infinitely thin surface, and that volume will bring out so many other things that you have to resolve for constructability for design. So this is something I would highlight. So something what we should be aiming for, you should be pushing for. Yes, well done everyone.
Yeah, I mean that's the end of it. And thanks so much for your feedback. I think so it was a masterpiece about materiality, about structure systems, geometry as well. So I think me included, we learned a lot today from your feedback. So thanks so much. We're gonna keep this recording. It's a gold, and I'm sure we can use it as well for like future classes. I'm not sure if you want to say any final words, like anyone else, the students as well, if you have anything to say or anything to kind of respond to before we close the session. Thanks for removing the spotlights. I think that's Laura in the background. Yeah, okay. Yeah, maybe they're tired. Anyway, we are happy to end the session now. Again, thanks so much for your time. It was a great pleasure having you all here. Thanks, Andre, Ines, and Catherine. And hopefully we can get your valuable feedback again in the future.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
You're on great
Hicham.
work.
And thank you, Angeliki, for having us.
Yep. Thanks for
Thank you
coming.
both. Yeah, I would like to also thank Angie for all your hard work with the students, all your assistance, all your notes that you have taken for them as well. You have spoiled them a lot, but it paid off eventually. And thanks for the students as well. You have done amazing. I'm very proud of your work. It doesn't even matter what the result is. I think your explorations and all the kind of the lessons learned from all your different form finding exercises has paid off. And I think you should be very proud of what you have done, what you have achieved as well in just 3 weeks. So thanks so much and good luck with your future presentations. And hopefully next module, you can take any of these concepts that you learned about today and take it further. So it's always good. It's always good to go back, revisit one of your old concepts and see how you can actually take it today to a new place. And yeah, thanks so much for your work.
Question. Angie, you did a great job. Amazing faculty. Very also amazing jury today. It was interesting. I wanted to stop you for the time, like policing, but I was like, okay, I cannot. This is going like too well. So thanks everybody for being connected with us today. It's always a pleasure. Guys, take some rest a little bit if you can, how you can during the weekend, and see you next week, Tuesday 16, with the structural optimization Pinups. Okay, it's still not over, but congratulations for now, and let's keep in touch, everybody.
Thanks, Laura, for being an amazing coordinator, and thanks for all your help.
Thanks to you. Bye.
Have a nice evening, everyone. Bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Bye. Thank you.